Warrior Lore. Chapter 131. Vast yuan qi surged out, and the pavilion exploded into pieces. Broken bricks and tiles scattered in all directions. Inside, a person was sitting cross-legged in the air. Rays of multicolored light surrounded his body, as if there was an invisible hand supporting him in the air, causing him to float above the ground. The multicolored light originated from within Gu Fei's body. It was like a raging, multicolored divine flame was burning, refining the true body with the fire of yuan qi, reaching the extreme and then sublimating. At some unknown time, the yin-yang fish pattern formed by the yin-yang jade pendant in the middle of Gu Fei's chest had already completely quietened down. There was no longer any fluctuation of yin and yang energy emitted from it. The pavilion exploded into pieces, and the broken tiles and beams that exploded out were all intercepted by Dan Qinzi, who was sitting cross-legged in front of the pavilion. Dan Qinzi only extended his right hand and lightly pressed forward. The scattered tiles and broken bricks that were flying in all directions instantly stopped. They were restrained by him, and then like raindrops, they fell down. The eyes of Gu Fei, who was sitting cross-legged in the air, were tightly closed. His body was violently trembling. He felt as if he had broken some kind of shackle in his body and opened a treasure in his body. A surge of power, a surge of yuan qi that was much stronger than the peak of the 8th level of the martial saint realm, surged out from within his body. His flesh and blood were trembling, his bones and joints were making noises, and all the bones in his body were trembling. Every inch of his body that could be reached by yuan qi seemed to be undergoing a subtle change. Like broken porcelain, his sternum and ribs that were full of cracks were repairing at a speed visible to the naked eye, and new bones were growing from the wounds. The broken bones in his arm were also joined together by the surge of yuan qi. They grew and repaired in the multicolored light that was like waves of the sea. Gu Fei seemed to have been reborn from the ashes. His heavily injured body was rapidly healing. The battle of life and death last night had allowed him to take another step forward on the road of martial arts. He was undergoing a metamorphosis. This transformation could be said to be a transformation that paved the way for the final breakthrough to the transcending mortality stage. Gu Fei walked step by step on the road of martial arts and finally reached the end of the realm of self-awakening. He stood in front of the screen wall of another great realm. The thunderous sound of the sky drum had strengthened his bones and muscles. Faint thunderous sounds could still be heard coming from Gu Fei's body. Along with the frequency of the thunderous sounds, the natural energy around his body began to vibrate rhythmically. Visible ripples spread out from Gu Fei's body. In the nearby pavilions, the outstanding members of the younger generation from the 3 great Taoist sects couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Among them, the eyes of the female cultivators shone brightly. However, not everyone was happy to see Gu Fei make a breakthrough in his cultivation. In a nearby pavilion, a white-robed youth and a white-robed youth looked coldly at the 5-colored figure floating in the air. "I really want to unsheath my saber and behead him," the white-robed young man said in a deep voice. His voice was so low that it was almost inaudible. It was obvious that he had some misgivings. "Don't act rashly," the handsome youth standing beside the white-robed youth said in a low voice. He looked at the figure in front of him with an extremely solemn expression. His eyes flickered as if he was thinking about something. I'm just saying. With your martial uncle Dan Qinzi protecting him, who in Dragon Emperor City dares to attack him?" The youth looked at the other figure in the cyan robe in front of him. "Big brother, I hope you don't attack him anymore." "Gu Fei is mine," Dongfang Chen said calmly. Seeing that Gu Fei had made another breakthrough on the path of cultivation, the urge to surpass Gu Fei in his heart became even stronger. Dongfang Long glanced at his younger brother with disdain and said, "You're really stubborn. If we let this person grow up, it will be a disaster for us, even for our Dongfang clan. Since we've already offended this person, we should cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. We should nip the disaster in the bud. That's the wise thing to do." Dongfang Chen remained silent. He didn't agree with his elder brother Dongfang Long's words. Perhaps only Dongfang Chen himself knew that Gu Fei had already left an indelible shadow in his heart when he defeated him in front of the public in the 9 Peaks competition. If he couldn't surpass Gu Fei and defeat Gu Fei, he couldn't erase the shadow in his heart. He, Dongfang Qin, would lose the qualification to aspire to be the strongest. It would be very difficult for him to make great achievements in cultivation. At this moment, Gu Fei certainly didn't know what the Dongfang brothers were thinking about. His body was surging with incomparably powerful energy. Every inch of his skin contained extremely terrifying energy, flowing with brilliant light. His body was like a fine gold and immortal iron that had been tempered thousands of times. It contained endless essence of heaven and earth as it flickered. Suspending in the air, Zhang Tai sensed the essence of the 5 elements in his body, causing his blood, flesh, tendons, and bones to release powerful life essence one after another. The sound of muscles and bones gradually weakened. However, Gu Fei's chi field didn't weaken. Instead, it became more powerful. As the old saying went, great sounds were silent. Chapter 132. At some unknown time, Gu Fei's hands were able to move. His muscles and bones surged, rapidly healing his injured body. His broken arm had already been completely healed. Miraculously, at this time, the life essence energy within Gu Fei's body was flourishing to the extreme. Gu Fei floated in the air around 20 feet above the ground. Endless heaven and earth origin energy constantly gathered around him. Spiritual light flashed and spiritual energy surged in a 100-foot radius. His eyes were closed and his hands were constantly moving. It seemed as if he was making random movements. Everyone was confused, but Dan Shenzi's calm eyes began to shine. As time passed, the canvassing moon pavilion was strangely quiet. It was so quiet that it caused one to feel an indescribable pressure. Who knew how many pairs of eyes were watching the canvassing moon pavilion? In the latter half of the night, the darkest period before dawn, Gu Fei's hands began to move in a seemingly chaotic manner. These seemingly untraceable movements began to reveal a somewhat mysterious flavor. Turn disorder into order. Turn the impossible into the law. The 3,000 great Taoists all lead to the same destination. Dan Shenzi looked at Gu Fei's dancing hands, and his eyes shined with a brilliant light. From Gu Fei's movements, he could feel the aura of the Tao. Although Gu Fei's movements seemed casual, the truth was that this was a manifestation of the Tao. From the mundane to the simple, Gu Fei was immersed in a mysterious martial realm. That complex martial intent was slowly peeled away by him, and he began to simplify it. Then, he began to practice it with his hands. It could be said that at this moment, Gu Fei had touched upon the edge of the Tao. Martial skills were also part of the Tao. Gu Fei's comprehension of martial had already touched upon the threshold of skill nearing the Tao. By this point, even the disciples of the younger generation from the 3 great Taoist societies could tell that Gu Fei was extraordinary. However, they didn't have a cultivation base like Dan Shenzi's. Gu Fei gave them a mysterious and unfathomable feeling. Although Li Lingfeng and the others seemed to have noticed something from Gu Fei's waving hands, they couldn't tell what it was exactly. They couldn't tell what it was, nor could they grasp it. Gu Fei's hands began to simplify the complicated movements. Then, a series of mysterious hand seals began to appear between his hands. As the hand seals appeared, terrifying waves began to emit from his fingers. It wasn't the wave of magic power, and it wasn't the power of divine arts released by divine arts practitioners. Among the experts of the younger generation, no one knew what kind of power the madra that Gu Fei had displayed represented. After all, the true meaning of martial arts had long disappeared. The path of martial arts had long declined in the Tunglong continent. Even though they didn't know what the madra represented, everyone could sense the terrifying power of the madra. It wasn't a Taoist method, but it was better than a Taoist method. It wasn't a divine art, but it was better than a divine art. At the sight of this scene, everyone was extremely shocked. Perhaps, in Dragon Emperor City, besides some old monsters, only Gu Fei knew that this was a manifestation of the martial arts. The mysterious madra was a battle skill that was 1 level higher than the 5 elements fist, the 5 elements extermination madra. The true martial arts have reappeared. Such words came out from Dragon Emperor City. Then, several strands of immortal thoughts that made even Dan Chunzi's heart palpitate instantly retreated and became silent. Dragon Emperor City is indeed a land of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Dan Chunzi let out a sigh of relief. The masters of those strands of immortal thoughts were very terrifying. They were definitely old monsters in the void-controlling realm. Of course, even these old monsters didn't want to offend the Taishian sect. After all, the three major sects were closely connected. Offending the Taishian sect was equivalent to offending the three major sections. Not everyone could bear the terrible consequences of offending the three major sections. The five elements madra gradually turned from complicated to simple. Every time Gu Fei made a madra, the essence of the world around him would vibrate. The madra aroused the power of the world, and Gu Fei's body surged with dazzling qi. The power of the five elements surged out of the madra. Sometimes, green light shone in the sky, illuminating the world. Sometimes, golden light shone like a scorching sun in the dark night. Sometimes, flames surged and drowned in a sea of fire. Sometimes, the sky turned dark and he was surrounded by dust and sand. Sometimes, water vapor surged and his body seemed to be surrounded by towering waves. With the change of the madra, the power of the five elements that erupted from Gu Fei's body also changed. He was in an ethereal state, and his body and cultivation method were completely in harmony. At this moment, the madra came from his heart, which was a natural reaction of the profound meaning of the martial arts technique. Although the five elemental extermination seal was just a practice, the moment the seal was executed, the power that was emitted had already shaken the heavens and earth. Not only did the faces of the young experts turn pale, even the transcending mortality realm cultivators were shocked when they saw this. It was not difficult to see that although Gu Fei's cultivation had not reached the transcending mortality realm, his strength was comparable to that of a cultivator who had just entered the transcending mortality realm. This young man was terrifying. He might be able to break the common sense of the cultivation world and challenge cultivators of a higher realm. At this time, there was already a group of heavily armored soldiers gathered outside the Canvas Moon Pavilion. When Gu Fei was cultivating, the vast yuan qi that surged out had caused the pavilion to collapse, and the sound it made was so loud that it attracted a group of patrolling soldiers from the city guard. However, when these soldiers arrived at the Canvas Moon Pavilion, they did not dare to barge in. Instead, they waited for orders from above. The background of the Canvas Moon Pavilion was not simple. Even the Southern Wasteland Duke did not want to offend the Canvas Moon Pavilion. When the sky was about to brighten, Gu Fei woke up from the mysterious martial realm. He descended from the sky and landed on the base of the broken pavilion. The pavilion he was in had already disappeared, leaving only the base of the pavilion below. The moment the madras stopped, Gu Fei's body exploded with a dazzling five-colored light. A majestic force erupted from his body and swept out in all directions, causing the heavens and earth to tremble. It was as if an extremely strong wind had appeared out of nowhere. The nearby pavilions, under the wind, swayed. Although they did not collapse, cracks appeared on the walls of the pavilions. The young experts on the pavilions all had to use their Xian Qi to resist the terrifying essence that surged out from Gu Fei's body. At this moment, the Qi of the five elements was everywhere in Gu Fei's body. His entire body, whether it was his bones, flesh, blood, or internal organs, was like a piece of iron. Everywhere was filled with endless power. He was reborn. He was only one step away from being truly reborn. Gu Fei felt that his entire body, from inside to outside, seemed to have been reborn. His cultivation had entered the realm of flesh and blood transformation, which was also the ninth layer of the awakening self realm. Flesh and blood transformation, that was to refine one's own flesh and blood into new flesh and blood. This was a heaven-defying method of cultivation, to rid the mortal body of its mortal nature. This process was very difficult. For hundreds of years, within the Jade Spirit Peak, no one had succeeded. Gu Fei's master was trapped in the ninth layer of the awakening self-realm. In the end, he couldn't truly change his flesh and blood and rid the mortal body of its mortal nature. In the end, he was buried in the soil. However, Gu Fei had plenty of time. He had already reached the ninth layer of the awakening self-realm at a young age. Additionally, With the help of the extremely mysterious yin-yang fish jade pendant, his cultivation speed had increased by 10 times. Therefore, his chances of breaking through to the shedding mortality realm were much higher than that of his master. Gu Fei opened his eyes. 2 substantial 5-colored immortal lights shot out of his eyes. Sitting on the base of the pavilion with crossed legs, his long hair fluttering in the air. He raised his head and roared, his voice shaking the sky. However, the rolling sound waves couldn't spread out. After all, they were in Dragon Emperor City. Danshenzi didn't want to alarm more cultivators. Therefore, he had secretly set up a soundproof realm around the courtyard with his great power. Apart from the explosion of the pavilion, there was no other sound that could be heard from this place. With his jet-black long hair fluttering in the air, Gu Fei's figure was incomparably tall. He formed a seal with his right hand and blasted it towards the sky. Endless golden light rushed into the sky and surged forward like a surging river. The area covered by the seal shook violently. The golden immortal light seemed to have broken the void. The violent power surged, emitting a destructive aura that made people's hearts palpitate. Boom! The base of the pavilion that Gu Fei was sitting on was instantly shattered. Everything within 15 meters around him turned into dust. The courtyard instantly became chaotic, causing sand and pebbles to fly. Shwa! With a sound, Danshenzi, who was sitting in front of Gu Fei, directly moved back. He didn't make any move to stop Gu Fei. Even if this courtyard of the canvassing lunar pavilion was demolished, it was nothing. At most, he would just have to pay for a new courtyard. Gu Fei stood up and retracted his powerful aura into his body. 9th heavenly layer, I've finally taken this step. A battle of life and death can really stimulate the body's potential. If I fight Baitangi now, I'm confident that I can fight him. Feeling the new power, Gu Fei didn't feel happy or sad at this moment. His state of mind was unusually calm. On another pavilion in the courtyard, Dongfang Chun and his elder brother Dongfang Long's expressions were rich and colorful. They changed again and again, but in the end, Dongfang Chun still revealed a brilliant expression. He jumped down from the pavilion and walked towards Gu Fei. Chapter 133. Gu Fei, I didn't expect you to break through at this time. Very good, Danshenzi said with a faint smile as he walked over to Gu Fei. Gu Fei's breakthrough was definitely a good thing for the trip to the ruined sky realm. Thank you for protecting me, Uncle Master. Gu Fei bowed to Danshenzi. Although his mind had been immersed in the mysterious martial realm, he could still vaguely feel what was happening in the outside world. Haha. Danshenzi laughed, which was rare for him. He waved his hand and said, Congratulations, the Green Spirit Peak has finally produced an amazing disciple. I remember that no one in the Green Spirit Peak has been able to cultivate to the 9th layer of awakening heaven before the age of 20. You are the first. Although Danshenzi looked middle-aged, he had actually been cultivating on Taishan Mountain for 200 or 300 years. Moreover, he was a disciple of the sect leader, so he definitely knew a lot of secrets. Uncle Master, you flatter me. Gu Fei still looked indifferent, as if he was not very happy because of the improvement in his cultivation. Or perhaps it could be said that in front of Danshenzi, he was a little reserved and a little restrained. Swish, swish. At this time, there was a flash of figures, and 2 people suddenly appeared beside Danshenzi. Haha, Brother Danshenzi, your Taishan sect is indeed full of talents. Among the 2 middle-aged Taoists who suddenly appeared, one of them holding a horsetail whisk and looking like an immortal said with a smile. This Taoist was no stranger to Gu Fei. It was the senior cultivator of the Shangqing sect, Ding Yangzi, who had once visited the Taishan sect with Lin Shuer. The other Taoist was empty-handed, but Gu Fei sensed a familiar aura from him. This Taoist's aura was very fierce. He stood there like a divine sword that had been unsheathed, making it difficult for people to look at him directly. A swordsman? Looks like this person must be a senior cultivator of the Guangxing immortal sect, Gu Fei thought to himself. So it's fellow Taoists Ding Yangzi and Lu Ruhai. Danshenzi wasn't unfamiliar with these 2 because they were the leaders of the Shangqing sect and Guangxing celestial sect's expedition to the ruined sky. This little guy must be practicing orthodox martial arts. I didn't expect your Taishan sect to have this long-lost cultivation method. The middle-aged Taoist, who was like a heavenly sword being unsheathed and had an intimidating aura, looked at Gu Fei from head to toe. His eyes flickered as if they were about to shoot out of his eye sockets. Gu Fei felt that the gaze of this senior sword immortal of Guangxing Immortal Sect was as sharp as a sword aura. It seemed to be able to pierce through the void and see through his entire body. This feeling of being seen through made Gu Fei feel a little uncomfortable. Gu Fei, greet Uncle Master Ding Yangzi of the Shangqing Sect and Uncle Master Lu Ruhai of the Guangxing Immortal Sect, Dan Qinzi said to Gu Fei with a smile. When Gu Fei heard this, he stepped forward and bowed to the two middle-aged Taoists, calling them Uncle Masters before retreating to Dan Qinzi's side in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. Good, not bad. The senior sword immortal of the Guangxing Immortal Sect, Lu Ruhai, couldn't help but nod inwardly when he saw Gu Fei's performance. However, Ding Yangzi, who was standing next to Lu Ruhai, frowned inwardly. Where did this Gu Fei pop out from? The last time he visited the Taishan sect, he didn't seem to have heard of such a young expert. The last time Ding Yangzi and Lin Shuer had visited the Taishan sect on behalf of the Shangqing sect, Lin Shuer had used her extraordinary Taoist techniques to defeat the outstanding disciples of the Shangqing sect's younger generation. Even Dongfang Chun had been defeated by her Taoist talisman techniques. If the Taishan sect had more powerful young disciples, they would have already jumped out to compete with Lin Shuer. At this time, the disciples of the three great Taoist sects who were watching nearby also walked over. Greetings, Uncle Master and Uncle Masters. An ordinary-looking young man in white bowed to Dan Qinzi, Ding Yangzi, and Lu Ruhai, then said to Gu Fei, Congratulations, junior brother Gu Fei. This ordinary-looking young man in white was the eldest senior brother of the Taishan sect's younger generation, Li Lingfeng. Behind Li Lingfeng were 8 young men, including Ziyu and Dongfang Chun. Dan Qinzi and the other 2 just nodded. At this time, the disciples of the Shangqing sect and the Guangxing Immortal sect also walked over. Let's let these young disciples interact with each other and improve their relationship. The 3 of us should find another place to discuss the details of entering the 100,000 mountains. Lu Ruhai said to Dan Qinzi and Ding Yangzi. That's great. Dan Qinzi and Ding Yangzi nodded. Since Gu Fei had returned, they would not waste any more time and should start preparing to enter the 100,000 mountains. The abnormal phenomenon that occurred once every 260 years was not far away. Every time night fell, the blood-red star in the sky that represented slaughter and death would shine brighter and brighter. The blood-red star was full of demonic nature. Every 260 years, it would appear in the sky and emit endless demonic power that would disturb the world. Every time this happened, the cultivation of the demonic people who had fallen into the demonic path would also greatly increase. For those who had fallen into the demonic path, the appearance of the demonic star that occurred once every 260 years was their sacred day. Legend had it that the day the demonic star shone in the sky was the day when the demonic ancestor returned. At this time, the demonic cultivators would be affected by the demonic star, and the demonic chi in their bodies would surge, becoming much stronger than usual. Every time this happened, the world would be full of demons, causing quite a bit of chaos in the world. The 3 great Taoist sects would also take advantage of the time when the power of the demonic star caused the power of heaven and earth to become chaotic, and the power of the seal would weaken, thus opening the space barrier of the ruined sky realm and allowing them to enter the ruined sky realm. After Dan Qinzi and the other 2 turned into beams of light and left, a tall young man with eyes like cold stars, who was the leader of the Shangqing sect, walked up and looked at Gu Fei. You are Gu Fei? I am Lin Xian of the Shangqing sect. I heard that you are the #1 expert of the younger generation in the Taishan sect. Now that I have seen you today, you are indeed extraordinary. I hope to have a chance to spar with you. Lin Xian's words were full of power. When the time comes, I will not disappoint you. Gu Fei looked at Lin Xian. He felt some pressure from Lin Xian. This person was an expert. Both of them were extremely powerful figures, and their words were full of the smell of gunpowder. When their eyes met, sparks seemed to fly in the air. The bystanders couldn't help but change their expressions when they saw the 2 of them fighting. Brother Gu, we meet again. At this time, A young man with a long sword on his back walked out from the crowd of the Guangxing immortal sect. So it is Brother Liu. When Gu Fei heard this, his attention immediately moved away from Lin Xian. He recognized the young man with a sword on his back at a glance. This young man was Liu Yunhe, who had once fought with Gu Fei in the Yuming Mountain against the ghost cultivators of Fengdu. At this time, a thought flashed in Gu Fei's mind. No wonder he felt a familiar aura on Liu Ruhai. It turned out that the person who had been chased by Zhao Xuanji that night and hurriedly rescued Liu Yunhe was Liu Ruhai, Uncle Liu. Brother Gu, come, let me introduce you. This is our eldest senior brother, Ren Wuming. This is our little junior sister, Li Mingyao. This is... Liu Yunhe introduced the disciples of the Guangxing immortal sect who had come to participate in the trial in the ruined sky to Gu Fei. Chapter 134. A group of promising young cultivators gathered together. The atmosphere was not that harmonious. No one was willing to admit that they were not as good as others. They were all young Xiozha who stood out among their peers. Youthful vigor, youthful frivolity, these were the strong points of youths, but also the weak points of youths. Young people had a drive and were not afraid of anything. It was a good thing to be courageous in cultivation. However, if this drive was used elsewhere, it would become arrogance. In the eyes of some people, Gu Fei's behavior was a bit arrogant. Although they witnessed the process of Gu Fei breaking through the cultivation barrier, it did not mean that the Shangqing sect and Guangxing immortal sect would be afraid of him. After chatting for a while, Lin Xian left with the Shangqing sect. Then, Ren Wuming also left with the Guangxing immortal sect. Among the disciples of the Guangxing immortal sect, only Liu Yunhe seemed to get along well with Gu Fei. After a short meeting, Gu Fei remembered a few outstanding figures from the Shangqing sect and the Guangxing immortal sect. Lin Xian from the Shangqing sect, Ren Wuming from the Guangxing immortal sect, and Li Mingyao. These people were all geniuses. Among the younger generation of their respective sects, it was hard to find a worthy opponent. It was not hard to imagine that in 20 or 30 years, they would become powerful figures in the cultivation world. After the people from the Shangqing sect and the Guangxing immortal sect left, only Gu Fei and the other 9 people from the same sect were left. Dongfang Chun, do you know someone called Dongfang Long? After the people from the Shangqing sect and the Guangxing immortal sect left, Gu Fei directly questioned Dongfang Chun. Gu Fei stared at Dongfang Chun. His gaze was as sharp as a knife. It made Dongfang Chun feel a strong sense of oppression, as if there was a knife on his back. He did not deliberately reveal a powerful force. It was a natural aura. Junior martial brother Gu Yu, Li Lingfeng and the others could feel the tense atmosphere between Gu Fei and Dongfang Chun and couldn't help but change their expressions. They knew that the Dongfang Long that Gu Fei mentioned had a great relationship with Dongfang Chun. He was Dongfang Chen's elder brother. Moreover, Dongfang Long was probably in Dongfang Chen's room. It had been 7 or 8 days since Dan Qinzi took Li Lingfeng and the others to Dragon Emperor City. Dongfang Long, Dongfang Chen's elder brother, didn't appear in Dragon Emperor City until 2 days ago. Dongfang Chen's face changed, and then he met Gu Fei's gaze, looked directly at Gu Fei, and said in a deep voice, Dongfang Long is my big brother. What, Gu Fei, do you know my big brother? Bang! Gu Fei took a step forward, and the entire ground suddenly trembled. Without any warning, an incomparably powerful aura swept out from Gu Fei's body. At this time, he realized that he didn't know when, but his clothes had been drenched in sweat. It was sticky and stuck to his body. It was very uncomfortable. Gu Fei, Dongfang Chun was furious. His fists were clenched, and the veins on his forehead were throbbing. He wanted to rush forward and fight Gu Fei to the death, but in the end, he still forcefully suppressed his anger. Gu Fei, who had already broken through to the 9th level of awakening, was simply undefeatable. Dongfang Chun sadly discovered that he didn't even seem to have the qualifications to fight Gu Fei to the death. Junior brother Dongfang, what the hell is going on? Li Lingfeng said to Dongfang Chun with a gloomy face. Dongfang Chun and Gu Fei, these 2 people were very strange. Ziyu, Song Ruochen, and the others also looked at Dongfang Chun in surprise. Just now, if it wasn't for big brother Li Lingfeng's timely words, looking at Gu Fei's posture, he might have directly attacked Dongfang Chun at any time. Dongfang Chun glanced at Li Lingfeng, then looked at the crowd, then let out a long sigh and helplessly said, "My big brother, maybe there is some misunderstanding with Gu Fei. I don't know the details." Of course, Dongfang Chun wouldn't say that his big brother conspired with others to poison Gu Fei with wine. Everyone looked at each other. How could things be so simple? There must be something fishy about this. Otherwise, Gu Fei wouldn't be so angry. Everyone dispersed, and Dongfang Chun also returned to his room with a bad expression. He closed the door and sat down at the table. Chapter 135. At noon, a figure in white silently rushed out of Dongfang Chin's room. It was a young man with a treasured saber on his waist. He was Dongfang Long, coldly glanced at the pavilion Gu Fei was in and revealed an expression that was not a smile. Then, he walked out of the courtyard and directly left the canvas lunar pavilion, drifting away. After a short while, a youth in white clothes arrived in front of a magnificent mansion in the central region of Dragon Emperor City. After looking around for a short while, the youth entered this extremely magnificent mansion. There were 4 soldiers dressed in winter iron armor, standing on either side of the main gate of the mansion. However, they seemed to be unable to see the young man in white and allowed him to walk into the mansion. On the banners above the main doors of the mansion, there were 3 large golden words written in flamboyant calligraphy: Regional King's Mansion. No wonder this mansion was so magnificent and even had armored guards. It turned out that this was the Prefecture King's mansion of the southern desolate Prefecture King, Yang Yuandao. The young man in white was obviously a frequent visitor of the Prefecture King's mansion. The guards outside the gate recognized him. Therefore, no one stopped him and allowed him to enter the Prefecture King's mansion. In the evening, in the canvassing moon pavilion, 9 young disciples of the 3 great Taoist sects received invitations from the southern desolate Prefecture King's mansion at the same time. The Prefecture King's crown prince, Yang Sun, would invite them to a banquet in the Prefecture King's courtyard. Among these 9 people, including Gu Fei, were the top 3 most outstanding disciples among the young disciples of the 3 major Taoist sects. Inside the pavilion, Gu Fei looked at the invitation in his hand and couldn't help but frown. He didn't know this Prefecture King's crown prince. Why did he invite him? He threw the invitation in his hand onto the table in front of him, then closed his eyes and sat cross-legged on his bed. Because of his breakthrough, he needed to familiarize himself with his new strength. He didn't care about the Prefecture King's crown prince. Prefecture King? So what if he was the emperor? The monarch of the secular world only had a great deterrent force to the common people. In the eyes of powerful cultivators, there was no difference between the monarch and the common people. Even these large empires with thousands of miles of territory had to pay tribute to some of the large sects within their borders. The state of Qi, where the Supreme Mystery Sect was located, had to pay tribute to the Supreme Mystery Sect every year. In the early evening, tens of thousands of households in Dragon Emperor City had lit up their lights. If someone watched Dragon Emperor City from afar, he would find that Dragon Emperor City was like a bright lamp in the endless primeval woods in the night. The pitch-dark, high city wall of Dragon Emperor City isolated the 2 different worlds. Outside the city wall, it was an endless wilderness covered with dense primitive woods. Inside the city wall, it was a prosperous human world. Of course, there were also foreign cultivators in Dragon Emperor City. Although humans occupied the majority of the population, it was not the southern wilderness prefecture conferred by the royal households of Yen country, but the hundreds of clans in southern wilderness. Actually, it was more appropriate to call them the southern wasteland barbarians. The southern wasteland prefecture king's palace was located in a courtyard in the west of the city. It occupied a vast area, and the layout was very particular. There were pavilions, terraces, small bridges, flowing rivers, strange rocks, fake mountains, and verdant trees. It was completely in the style of the Central Plains. After passing through the garden, there was a small lake at the back of the courtyard. Although it was a small lake, it had a circumference of several hundred mu. In the middle of the lake, there was a pavilion and a white jade bridge that spanned across the surface of the lake, connecting both sides. At this moment, melodious music drifted out from the pavilion in the middle of the lake. In the hall on the second floor of the pavilion, the ground was covered with a thick golden silk carpet. There were 9 tables on both sides of the hall. Each distinguished guest had his own table and sat cross-legged. As the host, Yang Sun, the son of the Southern Wasteland Prefecture King, was sitting at the head of the hall. In the middle of the hall, there were glamorous singers singing and dancing. There were only a few people sitting on both sides of the hall. Most of the seats were empty. Those sitting on the seats were all young men with dignified chi and strong vitality. As they looked around, their eyes flickered with shrewd light. These young men were all in their early 20s. Obviously, they were the outstanding figures of the young generation in Southern Wilderness. Report: Hu Zhan of the White Tiger clan has arrived. At this moment, a vigorous voice drifted from outside the pavilion. Invite him in. Yang Sun stood up. The other young men in the hall also stood up. The White Tiger clan of the Southern Wilderness was one of the 4 great saint clans. That Hu Zhan could be said to be the most outstanding character in the White Tiger clan. Among those of the same age as him, it was rare for him to meet a worthy opponent. He was an extremely powerful character. Why did Yang Sun invite him as well? The few young men mumbled in low voices. One could tell that they were very wary of this Hu Zhan. Ha! Old brother Yang. A resonant voice rang out from outside the pavilion as a tall and sturdy figure walked in. The entire pavilion, and even the air above the lake, was reverberating with the voice of this person. Those singers who were in the midst of dancing were all frightened by this sudden voice. They subconsciously halted their movements. What's going on? Where are the people from the 3 great Taoist sects? The person who came was a young man with a stocky build, thick eyebrows, and a pair of tiger eyes. His gaze was like that of a ferocious beast. This young man also appeared to be in his early 20s. However, he had a head of white hair that casually flowed behind his back. His entire body exuded an oppressive aura. The eyes of that young man were as sharp as blades. He swept his gaze around the great hall as his countenance turned somewhat unsightly. Old brother Yang, what do you mean by this? I'm here for the people from the 3 great Taoist sects. Where are they? When the few young men in the great hall saw this young man who resembled a ferocious tiger, their countenances involuntarily changed. As for the son of the Jiangling king, Yang Sun, he hurriedly walked over. Brother Hu Zhan, please be seated. Don't be impatient. The people from the 3 great Taoist sects should be arriving soon. Yang Sun smiled. I hope you won't disappoint me. You should know the consequences of making fun of me. This Hu Zhan basically didn't give any face to Yang Sun, the son of the Jiangling king. He directly sat down on the first seat on the left. That fellow Dongfang Long only knows how to come up with rotten ideas. Before the 3 great Taoist sects and the 100 races of the southern desolate regions started fighting, I already have a stomach full of anger. Yang Sun was already cursing Dongfang Long in his heart. However, this idea of Dongfang Long's really moved Yang Sun. With the people from the 3 great Taoist sects, it could be considered a good plan to deal with these arrogant fellows from the southern desolate regions. Yang Jian had an ugly expression on his face as he returned to his seat unhappily. Just when he sat down, that booming voice rang out again. Reporting: Gue Tung of the Black Tortoise race has arrived. Why is that bastard Gue Ting here as well? When Hu Zhan heard the name Gue Tung, he couldn't help but frown. At this moment, the sound of heavy footsteps rang out from outside. It was as though a gigantic monster was walking in from the outside. The entire pavilion seemed to be trembling along with the sound of footsteps. However, when the person outside entered the great hall, everyone discovered that the person who made such heavy footsteps was actually a yellow-skinned young man who was less than 5 chi tall. His hands hung down to his knees, and he had a pointy head and a narrow forehead. Smelly tiger, I didn't expect you to be here as well. The strange-looking young man treated Yang Sun, his master, as though he was transparent. After sweeping his gaze across the great hall, his gaze landed on Hu Zhan. What's wrong? Is your turtle shell itching again? Do you want to get beaten up? Hu Zhan glared at Gue Tung with his tiger-like eyes. A fierce killing intent immediately spread out from his body. Smelly tiger, what's the use of being fierce to me? If you have the guts, go and beat up the people from the three great Taoist sects. Gui Tong took heavy steps towards Hu Zhan and directly sat down on the seat beside Hu Zhan. At this moment, everyone could clearly see that there was a bulge on Gui Tong's back. It seemed as though there was something like a pot hidden under his clothes. Could it be that he was still carrying his turtle shell? Everyone present was an outstanding figure among the younger generation of the southern desolate regions. Naturally, they knew the cultivation method of the Black Tortoise clan. Seeing how heavy Gui Tong's steps were, he should still be carrying his turtle shell. Reporting. The Guangqing celestial sects Ren Wuming, Lu Yunhe, and Li Mingyao have arrived. When the elites of the southern desolate regions in the pavilion heard this, their expressions immediately turned solemn. They all looked towards the entrance of the pavilion. The people from the three great Tao sects had finally arrived. Chapter 136. Haha. The friends from the Guangqing immortal sect have arrived. Quickly invite them in. Quickly invite them in. That Yang Sun smiled. His smile was incomparably radiant. He passionately stood up from his seat and walked towards the three white-robed young men and women with treasured swords on their backs. The three young men and women who walked into the hall were none other than Ren Wuming, Lu Yunhe, and Li Mingyao of the Guangqing immortal sect. The prince of the Jiangling king, Yang Sun, was clearly much more enthusiastic towards Ren Wuming and the other two compared to Hu Zhan of the White Tiger clan and Gui Tong of the Black Tortoise clan. Yang Sun personally led Ren Wuming and the other two to the row of empty seats on the right. Ren Wuming was the eldest apprentice brother of the Guangqing immortal sect. Hence, he sat on the first seat on the right. Lu Yunhe sat below Ren Wuming, followed by Li Mingyao. The junior apprentice sister of Guangqing, Li Mingyao, wore white clothes that fluttered in the wind. Her skin was whiter than snow. At the instant she walked in, the eyes of the disciples from the major powers of the southern desolate region all lit up. She had a pair of clear and spirited eyes, long eyelashes, rosy and sexy lips, and a head full of jet-black long hair that was like a black waterfall cascading down her back. In addition, she had been cultivating the sword Dao for many years and had a treasured sword on her back. This caused this junior apprentice sister of Guangqing to have a heroic spirit amidst her gentleness, making her disposition even more attractive. Facing the scorching gazes of those people, Li Mengyao's expression was indifferent. There wasn't the slightest bit of fluctuation on her beautiful face. She was like a fairy from the moon palace who didn't eat the food of the mortal world. At this moment, the female singers who were performing in the hall had already been ordered to retreat by Yang Sun. Reporting. Lin Xian, Zhu Yiqi, and Yi Chun from the Shangqing sect have arrived. Just as Ren Wuming and the others sat down, the welcoming voice rang out once again. At the entrance of the hall, three young men in their early 20s walked in. Next, the people invited by Yang Sun also arrived one after another. As the owner of this place, Yang Sun entered and exited the hall, standing up to welcome the distinguished guests. At this moment, everyone could see that Yang Sun, the Royal Highness of Duke Xing, wasn't that enthusiastic towards the young talents of the major local forces in South Wilderness. Instead, he treated the young disciples of the three major Taoist sects who had temporarily settled in Dragon Emperor City warmly and considerately. When Hu Zhan saw Yang Sun treating him so lightly, he couldn't help but feel angered. As for Gui Tong of the Black Tortoise clan, he didn't treat it as a big deal. His beady eyes would occasionally roam about the Tao sect's disciple. In the end, out of the 9 elites of the southern desolate regions, only 7 people came. There were 2 empty seats. Evidently, the 2 people Yang Sun invited didn't come. Perhaps, those 2 did not even deign to come. After all, the one who ruled the southern wasteland was not the southern wasteland duke, Yang Yuandao, who was conferred the title of the southern wasteland duke by the Yin kingdom. Instead, it was the various great powers behind the southern wasteland elites. Additionally, these forces were not limited to Dragon Emperor City. Even the entire South Wilderness was their world. The southern wasteland was an ancient hell filled with legends. According to legends, the southern wasteland had already existed since the ancient times. In the depths of the southern wasteland was the 100,000 mountain range. The 100,000 mountain range was even more mysterious. Even the barbarians of the southern wasteland weren't willing to step into it easily. The barbarians of the southern wasteland didn't obey the Yin Empire at all. Although the great Yin Empire was powerful, its power lay in the territory of the Central Plains. In this boundless wilderness, even the whip of the empire couldn't touch it. The real rulers of the southern wasteland were the clans of those people on the left in the hall of the pavilion. From a certain perspective, these people were on the same level as Duke Yang Yuandao of the southern wasteland. In the eyes of these people, Yang Sun, the royal highness of Duke Xing, was nothing. If it was in normal times, these elites of the southern wasteland would simply ignore Yang Sun's invitation. The reason why Hu Zhan and the others came was actually because of the people of the three major Taoist sects. Of the 9 seats on the right in the hall, only one was empty. In the end, Li Lingfeng and Ziyu still came to keep the appointment. After all, nominally, the southern wasteland Duke Xing's palace was the administrator of the southern wasteland. Therefore, they couldn't refuse the invitation of the royal highness of Duke Xing. However, other than cultivating, Gu Fei didn't care about the affairs of the outside world. He directly ignored the invitation of the royal highness of Duke Xing. Hence, it seemed that Dongfang Long's scheme was about to fail. Yang Sun didn't see the arrival of the person Dongfang Long spoke of. A trace of disappointment involuntarily flashed in his eyes. He heard that within the 3 major Taoist sects, only that person might be able to suppress the elites of the southern wasteland. After everyone sat down, Yang Sun, the host, didn't even say anything when Hu Zhan already spoke. What a great reputation the 3 major Taoist sects have. I, Hu Zhan, have long wanted to experience the innate techniques of the Taoist sects. As he spoke, Hu Zhan's tiger eyes gleamed with sharpness as they swept past Ren Wuming, Lin Xian, and Li Lingfeng. Hu Zhan had long been itching to fight, wanting nothing more than to have a great battle with the people of the 3 major Taoist sects. From his point of view, among the elites of the 3 major Taoist sects, only these 3 were worthy for him to fight. As for the others, he had no interest at all. When Yang Sun saw that Hu Zhan's words were filled with the smell of gunpowder, he couldn't help but feel joy in his heart. He couldn't be bothered to say anything and was more than happy to watch the show from the side. As expected, the countenances of Li Lingfeng and the others instantly changed when they heard this. Hu Zhan's actions were undoubtedly a naked challenge to them. The southern wasteland is filled with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. We also wish to experience the innate techniques of the experts of the southern wasteland. Although Ren Wuming's words were calm, everyone present could feel his battle intent. The path of the sword immortal was a branch of the Taoist sects. They cultivated the Tao of the sword, and their methods were to slay demons and exterminate devils. It was very different from the Tao techniques of the Supreme Mystery sect and the High Clarity sect. Ren Wuming cultivated the sword day and night. He was like a sword, and the sword was like him. Not only was the aura from his body like an unsheathed divine sword, incomparably sharp, but his temperament was also extremely sharp, unwilling to show weakness. I invited everyone here because I wanted to create an opportunity for the elites of the southern wasteland to spar with the outstanding successors of the 3 great Taoist sects. If you all wish to spar here, I have no objections. Yang Sun didn't forget to add fuel to the fire from the side. None of the people present were fools. They naturally knew that Yang Jian's invitation was definitely not that simple. However, regardless of whether it was the elites of the southern wasteland or the outstanding successors of the 3 great Taoist sects, although they knew that this might be a trap, they still came. This was because the elites of the southern wasteland were very interested in the successors of the 3 great Taoist sects who came from the Central Plains. As for Li Lingfeng, Ren Wuming, and the others, they also wanted to spar with the outstanding characters of the southern wasteland. Very well. My name is Hu Zhan. From today onwards, my name will be imprinted in your heart. Even if you want to forget it, you won't be able to. Hu Zhan stood up, and a terrifying force erupted from his majestic body. The table in front of him instantly shattered, turning into sawdust. Gue Tong, who was next to Hu Zhan, dodged to the side like a startled rabbit the moment Hu Zhan stood up. At this moment, his footsteps were even lighter than a leopard's, landing on the ground without a sound. Compared to the heavy footsteps he had when he came, it was the complete opposite. I am Ren Wuming of the Guangxing Celestial Sect. If you have any skills, bring it on. Ren Wuming also stood up, and an incomparably sharp sword chi spread out from his body. Whoosh, whoosh. Transparent and invisible sword chi seemed to surround his body, and in the void, there was a slight sound of something breaking through the air. Chapter 137. A dangerous aura instantly enveloped Ren Wuming. In the next instant, Hu Zhan, who was as ferocious as a tiger, directly leaped up. Tiger stripes appeared on his body as his right palm directly slammed towards Ren Wuming. There were no excessive words, no apprehension. Even if the southern desolate prefecture king's crown Prince Yang Sun was present, and this was the side courtyard of the prefecture king's manor, Hu Zhan acted when he wanted to, completely treating Yang Sun as transparent. His white hair fluttered wildly, ferocious, wild, and full of bestiality. This was the portrayal of this expert from the white tiger race. Hu Zhan, who looked like a ferocious tiger, had a ferocious glint in his eyes. When he struck out with his right hand, tiger stripes instantly appeared on his entire palm. A sharp tiger claw shot out from his hand, and the sound of wind instantly rose within the hall. It wasn't a true white tiger claw, but the ferocious might of the white tiger caused the heavens and earth to tremble. Under the tiger claw, the astral wind was like blades. Before the claw arrived, Ren Wuming already felt as if he was being slashed by thousands of blades. Bzz. The sword energy in Ren Wuming's body circulated. Rays of sword astral formed a dense sword net that coiled around his body, blocking the blade-like astral wind 3 feet away. Everyone's expression changed at this moment. Everyone felt an incomparably powerful pressure from Hu Zhan's body. The tiger claw that rushed out from Hu Zhan's right claw had already become as large as a small mountain, directly slamming down towards Ren Wuming's head. Under the envelopment of the tiger claw, Ren Wuming felt endless pressure, as if a huge mountain was pressing down on him. The huge tiger claw emitted a terrifying fluctuation that caused people's hearts to palpitate, sealing an area and shaking the heavens and earth. Ren Wuming couldn't help but be shocked. This Hu Zhan was even more terrifying than he had imagined. He didn't dare to be negligent. His shoulder moved. Clang! With a loud sound, a bolt of light shot out from his back and turned into a dazzling sword light that slashed forward. The metal wind blew, and the sword chi crisscrossed. Under the impact of the cold sword chi, the temperature in the great hall plummeted. Everyone felt a chill invading their bodies. Boom! The huge beast claw and the devastating sword light collided in an instant. Unparalleled sword chi exploded with a loud rumble, and the power of the claw overflowed in all directions. The ground around Ren Wuming was completely crushed by the energy storm that swept out. The people from the 3 great Taoist sects immediately retreated. Boom! Suddenly, a big hole appeared in the pavilion in the lake. Amidst the billowing dust, the sword light that Ren Wuming had sent out was directly slapped away by the tiger claw. The huge claw shadow also dissipated. Ren Wuming was sent flying out of the pavilion. He stepped on the surface of the lake and stood on the waves. Although he was forced to retreat by the powerful Hu Zhan, he did not panic. Instead, his battle intent surged. The Guangxing Immortal Sect's sword manipulation art is only SOSO. Hu Zhan was extremely arrogant. His loud voice resounded on the lake. He took a step forward and directly rushed out of the huge hole, arriving on the surface of the lake. In the great hall, the countenance of Yang Sun, who was seated high up, was extremely unsightly to behold. So what if a pavilion was destroyed? But what he was angry about was Hu Zhan's arrogance. After all, this was his, Yang Sun's, place. If only I had overwhelming strength. Yang Sun was filled with hatred. The feeling of being disregarded by others was extremely uncomfortable. He felt very sullen. You guys can fight. Fight to your heart's content. It's best if there are casualties on one side, forming an irreconcilable grudge. The crown prince of the Jiangling king, Yang Sun, had always been angry with the southern desolate barbarian race who looked down on the Jiangling king manor. He wanted nothing more than to make a few powerful enemies for the southern desolate barbarian race. Hence, when Dongfang Long told him about this brilliant plan, he immediately agreed. Dongfang Long wanted to borrow the hands of the southern desolate barbarian race to deal with Gu Fei, while Yang Sun wanted to borrow the power of the three great Taoist sects to suppress the southern desolate barbarian race. The two of them could be considered to have hit it off and worked together to push this matter forward. Swish, swish, swish. Silhouettes flashed on the surface of the lake. The elite disciples of the three great Taoist sects and the elites of the southern desolate barbarian race all appeared on the surface of the lake. Everyone stood on the clear water, staring at Hu Zhan and Ren Wuming from afar. Under the hazy moonlight, the image of a white tiger was faintly discernible on Hu Zhan's body, emitting an unparalleled ferocious might. Beside Ren Wuming, a lightning-like sword light danced around him, emitting an unparalleled sword chi. Humph! You dare to look down on my Guangxing immortal sect? I truly want to see what capabilities you have. Ren Wuming's countenance changed. His eyes stared at Hu Zhan's face, the divine light in his eyes as sharp as swords. I want you to lose wholeheartedly. Hu Zhan laughed hideously and directly punched towards Ren Wuming. The lake water in front of him suddenly sank, and then suddenly there was a monstrous wave. A powerful energy fluctuation that could topple the mountains and overturn the seas instantly exploded. A ferocious tiger image appeared in the wave, roaring as it pounced towards Ren Wuming ferociously. Hu Zhan of the white tiger race was like a ferocious tiger. His entire body emitted an unfathomable ferocious power. The image of the ferocious tiger, formed by the lake water, was comparable to a real ferocious tiger. Under that pounce, the entire lake trembled. It had the terrifying might of the Tiger King coming down from the mountain, frightening all the beasts. It was ferocious, overbearing, and indomitable. Flying Star Sword. Ren Wuming shouted loudly. His hand formed a sword sign and pointed forward. Wong! A crisp sound of the sword, like the cry of a crane from the 9 heavens, soared into the sky. The sword light grew 10 feet, and like a meteor streaking across the sky, it shot towards the ferocious tiger that was pouncing towards him. The lake water silently separated, and the huge waves surged to both sides. The mud at the bottom of the lake could be seen clearly. The sword seemed to tear through the void, and the entire lake surface was split in half. Pong! With a loud sound, the unparalleled meteor sword light directly split the ferocious tiger that was formed by the waves into 2 halves, bursting into a sky full of splashes. After breaking Hu Zhan's fist energy, Ren Wuming's sword aura did not stop. The sword sign in his hand changed, and a terrifying sword aura surged from his body again. 7-star sword transformation. 7 stars illuminate the sky. Ren Wuming used his full strength, and the sword sign pointed towards the dazzling sword light. As the sword light trembled, it actually split into 7 shocking sword rainbows that were like meteors, and they flew towards Hu Zhan. The 7 sword rainbows vaguely seemed to form a formation, and they trapped Hu Zhan under the sword light. The power of the sword aura caused everyone present to be shocked. The eldest senior of the Guangxing Celestial Sect's younger generation disciples was indeed powerful. Lu Yunhe and Li Mingyao, who were watching the battle from the side, had a trace of a smile on their faces. Roar! At that moment, a tiger's roar shook the heavens and the earth. Hu Zhan, who was trapped by the sword light, had his long white hair crazily fluttering. The baleful aura on his body soared into the sky. Tiger stripes appeared on his body, and the bright white light intertwined with each other. After that, a huge image of a white tiger was condensed on the surface of his body. An extremely ferocious aura swept out. At that moment, Hu Zhan's strength reached an extreme. It was as if he had truly transformed into a ferocious tiger. The tiger's claws tore the heavens and the earth apart, and they directly slapped towards the 7 terrifying sword lights. Bong! 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 7 consecutive sounds, and the 7 shocking sword rainbows were actually directly slapped away by Hu Zhan. The image of the white tiger on Hu Zhan's body was condensed, and it was wild, ferocious, and its murderous aura was unparalleled. The ferocious might of the white tiger shook the heavens and the earth. Ren Wuming's body violently shook, and he retreated 7 steps on the surface of the lake. With every step he retreated, he spat out a mouthful of blood, as if those 7 heavy blows had directly landed on his body. Li Lingfeng, Lin Xian, and the others only then saw how terrifying the outstanding figures of the southern wasteland barbarian tribe's younger generation were. Chapter 138. Without a doubt, Ren Wuming had suffered a heavy blow. Out of the 7 destructive sword lights that were like shooting stars, 6 of them had been shattered. Only 1 sword light hadn't been shattered. That was because it was a flying sword light that had been transformed from a real sword. That dim sword light was recalled by Ren Wuming. With a clang, it entered the scabbard on his back. At this moment, his face was deathly pale as he looked at the roaring white tiger image in front of him in disbelief. Unfortunately, he was only 1 step away from the transcending mortality realm and couldn't completely become one with the sword. Otherwise, he would be able to display an unparalleled sword formation. No matter how powerful Hu Zhan was, he would be able to defeat him. Boom! The peerless white tiger soared into the sky. The surface of the lake under its feet instantly exploded. A vast and unparalleled power burst out, causing water to splash all over the sky. The entire lake shook violently. This Hu Zhan definitely had a terrifying strength that surpassed the awakening self-realm. A horrifying aura surged out in all directions in an earth-shattering manner. Everyone's gazes were attracted by the tall figure that had leapt into the sky. Hu Zhan, an outstanding young expert from the southern wasteland barbarian tribe. At this moment, he transformed into a white tiger and pounced towards Ren Wuming from the sky, emitting an unparalleled and overbearing might. Ren Wuming knew that he couldn't resist, so he quickly retreated on the surface of the lake like a phantom, leaving behind a series of afterimages that hadn't dissipated in time. Boom! The tall figure swept downwards like a ferocious tiger pouncing on its prey. The place where Ren Wuming originally stood was instantly shattered. A water pillar soared high into the sky, and the entire lake shook a few times. The huge waves slammed onto the pavilion in the lake, directly sweeping the pavilion and the white jade bridge away, shattering it into pieces. The white tiger image on Hu Zhan's body seemed as if it was about to materialize. The tiger's stripes emitted a bright light. The unparalleled ferocious tiger swept everything with unstoppable force. This was the sign of the white tiger bloodline awakening in Hu Zhan's body. The southern wasteland white tiger tribe's bloodline was said to be inherited from the ancient almighty, the white tiger Saint King. The people of this tribe regarded themselves as the descendants of the white tiger, and the totem they worshipped was the white tiger. Hu Zhan ferociously turned around, and his thick and long tiger tail fiercely lashed out. The whole tail emitted a bright white light, and swept towards Ren Wuming's waist like a divine whip. The white light that shot out from the tiger's tail was several tens of feet long. It rapidly streaked across the void, emitting a sharp whistling sound that made people's scalps numb. Its imposing manner was overwhelming. Bang! Ren Wuming was directly sent flying by the tiger tail as he coughed out large mouthfuls of blood. The number 1 expert of the younger generation of the Guangxing Immortal sect was defeated. He was defeated by the young expert of the southern desolate white tiger race, Hu Zhan, eldest senior brother. A few exclamations came from afar. Roar! A tiger's roar shook the sky. After that, an incomparably wild power erupted. The white tiger that had appeared from Hu Zhan's body burst forth with a white light. Its claws grabbed towards Ren Wuming, who was flying backwards. The huge beast claw seemed to break the void and caught up with Ren Wuming in an instant. At the moment when he was about to be caught by the tiger claw that was surrounded by white light, Ren Wuming suddenly felt a strong wave of sword chi coming from behind him. In the blink of an eye, a bright sword light brushed past Ren Wuming's body and shot forward from behind him, meeting the terrifying tiger claw that was chasing after him. Boom! The sword light directly destroyed the tiger claw, but the sword light was also sent flying. Swish! Swish! A silhouette flashed beside Ren Wuming. A white silhouette rushed forward from his side. The sword light that was repelled was recalled by that person with a wave of his hand. 1 person and 1 sword rushed towards Hu Zhan, eldest senior brother. A clear voice resounded beside his ear. Ren Wuming was supported by a person, and they quickly slid across the surface of the lake. In an instant, The two of them stepped onto the land on the shore. Little Junior's sister quickly asked junior brother Yun He to back off. He is not Hu Zhan's opponent. Ren Wuming said to Li Mingyao, who was beside him anxiously. Under the urgent situation, he almost spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face was flushed. The sword Immortal Tao of Guangqing Celestial Sect was to spend his entire life as a sword. He would train his sword energy internally and cultivate his sword externally. He would use the sword energy within his body to temper his sword all day and night, causing the sword to have a spirit and become one with the sword. Ren Wuming's flying sword was closely related to him. Their chi meridians were connected. That Hu Zhan broke Ren Wuming's flying sword technique. The tyrannical power didn't directly hit Ren Wuming's body, but it still made Ren Wuming suffer a great impact. Ren Wuming wanted Li Mingyao to call Lu Yunhe down, but it was already too late. When Li Mingyao supported Ren Wuming, who was on the verge of falling back to the shore, the outcome of the battle in the lake had already been decided. The might of the White Tiger wasn't something that Lu Yunhe could withstand. After a few rounds, his flying sword was caught by Hu Zhan, and he was also hit by Hu Zhan until he spat out blood and retreated. Guangqing Celestial Sect doesn't deserve its reputation. Hu Zhan grabbed Lu Yunhe's flying sword with one hand and stood in the middle of the lake with his head raised. His white hair fluttered in the wind, and the ferocious white tiger that had appeared on his body had already disappeared. However, that extremely fierce might did not disappear. When Ren Wuming heard that, he spat out a mouthful of blood. He was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face turned as pale as paper, and his body trembled slightly. Hu Zhan ignored the sharpness of the flying sword and directly grabbed Lu Yunhe's flying sword. With the sharpness of the flying sword that could cut through hair and iron like mud, it actually couldn't cut through his palm. It was really shocking. The flying sword in Hu Zhan's hand was like a spiritual snake, struggling in his hand, wanting to fly into the sky. However, it was firmly held in his hand. When Li Lingfeng, Lin Xian, and the others saw that Ren Wuming was actually defeated, they were all indescribably shocked. One should know that Ren Wuming's cultivation was about the same as theirs. If he was defeated, then Hu Zhan threw the flying sword in his hand towards Lu Yunhe. The disciples of Guangqing Celestial Sect always had their swords with them. Although this Hu Zhan was big and rough, he also had a delicate side. If he really snatched Lu Yunhe's flying sword and didn't return it, then the White Tiger race would really become enemies with Guangqing Celestial Sect. Actually, Hu Zhan still had some scruples in the end. Lu Yunhe hurriedly formed a sword seal and put the flying sword back into the sword sheath. Both of you come at me together. Hu Zhan's tiger eyes flickered with endless ferocity as he glanced at Li Lingfeng and Lin Xian. His face revealed a trace of disdain, and he revealed his arrogance. He actually wants to challenge both of us at the same time? Li Lingfeng and Lin Xian looked at each other, and they were both shocked. The three great Taoist sects were like brothers. Ren Wuming's defeat had already caused them to lose face. If they lost to Hu Zhan as well, then the reputation of the three great Taoist sects would also be damaged. The outstanding descendants of the younger generation of the three great Taoist sects were no match for the young talents of the southern wasteland. This was something that Li Lingfeng and the others absolutely could not accept. Junior Ziyu, quickly go and invite Gu Fei. Li Lingfeng said to Ziyu, who was beside him, in a low voice. Then, he stepped forward and walked towards Hu Zhan. Ziyu immediately flew onto the shore and quickly left. The number one expert of the younger generation of the Supreme Mystery Sect was Gu Fei. When Lin Xian saw Li Lingfeng coming forward, his body also moved. He was about to go forward and join forces with Li Lingfeng to fight Hu Zhan. After all, they could not afford to lose now. Chapter 139. The Southern Wasteland Barbarian Tribe had inherited a trace of the bloodline of the ancient holy beast. Therefore, their starting point was naturally higher than ordinary people. This was their innate talent. It was an innate advantage that others couldn't reach. However, not all the Southern Wasteland Brute tribe members were able to awaken the sacred beast bloodline within their bodies. After all, since the ancient times, the sacred beast bloodline had already become extremely thin. It was not easy to awaken it. However, It was very obvious that the White Tiger bloodline within Hu Zhan of the White Tiger clan had already awakened. The White Tiger divine mark that had rushed out from his body was the best proof. The awakening of bloodline allowed Hu Zhan to be able to execute the White Tiger clan's unique divine abilities. Even Guangxing Celestial Sect's eldest senior brother, Ren Wuming, would be defeated by the ferocious power of his White Tiger. Although they were both at the awakening ninth heaven, Hu Zhan's strength had long surpassed the ninth heaven with the terrifying power derived from the White Tiger bloodline in his body. He was infinitely close to the transcending mortality stage, and was even comparable to the cultivators who had just entered the transcending mortality stage. This was what Hu Zhan relied on to defeat Ren Wuming. It was also what he relied on to challenge the three great Taoist sects. After defeating Ren Wuming, Zhan, who was as arrogant as a tiger, actually issued a challenge to Li Lingfeng and Lin Xian. On this night, above the lake in the Junwang's courtyard, under the arrangement of someone, a duel between the elites of the southern wasteland and the outstanding disciples of the three main Tao sects was taking place. This matter concerned the reputation of the three great Taoist sects in the face of the southern desolate barbarian race. It was impossible for the young elites of the two factions to cower. Things seemed to be developing in the direction that Yang Sun and Dongfang Long had planned. In the end, would the young elites of the southern wasteland come out on top, or would the descendants of the Taoist gate suppress the barbarians of the southern wasteland? At this moment, no one knew the final result. But no matter what the result was, the prince of the Jiangling king, Yang Sun, and Dongfang Long had achieved their goal. Ren Wuming's defeat could only mean that the three great Taoist sects were temporarily at a disadvantage. The battle was not over yet. Hence, no one could come to a conclusion at this point in time. Supreme Mystery Sect's Li Lingfeng, these past few days, people have often mentioned you in front of me. Hu Zhan stood on the surface of the lake. The surrounding lake water was as calm as a mirror. His powerful aura caused the lake water beneath his feet to not have the slightest ripple. The surrounding air seemed to have frozen. Is that so? But I've never heard of you. His right palm pressed down on Hu Zhan, and the Jin trigram appeared on his palm. The Jin trigram represented the power of mountains and rivers. Li Lingfeng's right palm seemed to have drawn in the endless mountain qi, and it was like a huge mountain was descending from the sky to suppress Hu Zhan. Rumble. Under Li Lingfeng's palm, there was the sound of 10,000 galloping horses. The water on the surface of the lake bounced continuously, and the terrifying power shook the entire space. The Tao technique and mystique that Li Lingfeng had displayed was extremely marvelous. The trigram was like a landslide, and the ground seemed to sink. The terrifying mountain qi sealed the space below, and it completely enveloped Hu Zhan. When the people from the three main Taoist sects saw this scene, they couldn't help but reveal looks of joy on their faces. Even the eyes of Lin Xian from the Shangqing sect and Gue Tong from the Black Tortoise clan, who were in a stalemate, were attracted by the battle in the lake. Lin Xian had originally wanted to fight alongside Li Lingfeng. Hu Zhan, who was incomparably domineering and arrogant, was blocked by Gue Ting from the Black Tortoise clan. Roar. The tiger's roar shook the sky, and the tiger's stripes appeared. Hu Zhan felt threatened, and the image of a white tiger surged out from Hu Zhan's body. Then, with a bang, the surface of the lake cracked, and the lake water sank. A white tiger pounced towards the sky, baring its fangs and claws. It was extremely ferocious. The Jin trigram that was descending from the sky had already become as big as a mountain, and it gathered the mountain qi from all directions. The light illuminated half the sky, and within the trigram, there seemed to be an endless amount of mountains appearing. The white tiger and its body became one, as if an ancient sacred white tiger had descended into the world. The tiger's might shocked the heavens and earth. Hu Zhan directly rushed into the sky, pouncing towards the trigram that was suppressing him. Rumble. There was a loud rumble, and Hu Zhan had gone crazy. He actually shattered the trigram and directly rushed into the endless mountain qi. Under everyone's shocked and indescribable gazes, the enormous trigram that seemed like 100,000 mountains pressing down at the same time collapsed, and the mountain qi spread out mightily in all directions. Rumble. Everything in the vicinity seemed to have been crushed by the enormous mountains, and they completely collapsed as if they were dry weeds and rotten wood. The lake water was flipped up high into the sky, revealing the pitch-black silt at the bottom of the lake. Everyone retreated into the distance, and under this terrifying force, more than half of the pavilions in the courtyard collapsed. Chapter 140. Boom! The Jinn trigram completely collapsed, and the endless mountain energy that was gathered by the trigram exploded with a loud bang. It was as if a level 10 storm had appeared in the sky out of nowhere, and the vast and mighty energy that was released made it seem like heaven and earth were about to collapse. It was extremely terrifying. Network, in the center of the energy storm, people could faintly see a huge white tiger roaring towards the sky while baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, shocking the entire space. Such a momentum had long aroused the attention of the major forces in Dragon Emperor City. Mysterious figures started to appear around Dragon Emperor Courtyard. Someone was paying attention to everything that happened here. The application of Taoist magic skills could arouse the vitality of the universe. No wonder it could arouse the attention of some people. After all, Dragon Emperor City was the center of all the competitions between major forces in South Wilderness. The spies of all the major forces were all over Dragon Emperor City. After the divinatory diagram of Jin collapsed, the divinatory diagram of Sun appeared in the energy storm. Being surrounded by the divinatory diagram of Jin, Li Lingfeng rushed out of the energy storm with the help of the wind strength induced by the divinatory diagram of Sun. In the instant that Li Lingfeng rushed out, a huge tiger claw with white tiger divine inscriptions that looked almost solid descended from the sky, emitting a terrifying energy fluctuation as it slammed down on Li Lingfeng's head. The situation was reversed in a split second. Li Lingfeng, who had taken the upper hand, was forced to dodge away from the sharp edge of the tiger. All the onlookers were flurried and pretty intense. The magical effect of Can and Li, water and fire. Li Lingfeng would never sit and wait for death. He clenched his teeth and performed a Taoist incantation gesture with both hands. The two trigrams of Can and Li rushed out of his body in an instant, transforming into a monstrous flood and raging flame between his hands. Then, they surged toward the gigantic tiger claw that was slapping down from above his head. Can trigram was water, while Li trigram was fire. When the two forces intertwined, the power of water and fire increased at once. The surging water and the overwhelming immortal flames instantly destroyed the tiger claw. Rumble. Amidst the power of water and fire, a thunderous sound rang out. A tiger's claw directly broke through the seal of the 1,000 heavy waves of the Sea of Flames and clawed at Li Lingfeng below. This was a shocking scene. Everyone was shocked by the scene in front of them. The power of the white tiger was extremely terrifying. Tao techniques and supernatural powers seemed to be unable to contend against it. It seemed to have the momentum to break through all supernatural powers. Li Lingfeng was shocked. He wanted to use the power of the Sun trigram to escape the terrifying tiger claws that were descending from the sky, but in the next moment, he was indescribably shocked. He felt that he was actually imprisoned by an unfathomable force. His body seemed to have sunk into a quagmire, and moving was actually extremely strenuous. It was difficult for him to escape from the tiger's claws. Beads of sweat the size of soybeans appeared on his forehead. His clothes were instantly drenched in sweat. Online ETN. Damn it! Li Lingfeng's heart pounded violently. This Hu Zhan was even more terrifying than he had imagined. It was hard for him to contend against him. Time to go all out. Li Lingfeng's thoughts spun rapidly. He knew that he couldn't dodge, so he could only go all out. The outcome of the battle would be decided in this moment. Terrifying waves of magic power surged out from Li Lingfeng's body, causing his figure to look blurry. Li Lingfeng performed a Tao incantation. Rays of magic power converged on his hands. The Zhen trigram that lingered around his body shone brightly as he performed the incantation. Li Lingfeng absorbed the Zhen trigram into his palms. With the Zhen trigram as thunder, Li Lingfeng's hands instantly emitted blinding electric currents. Rumble. Rumble. Rays of blinding lightning descended from the sky, directly breaking through the shackling force on his body and exploding beside Li Lingfeng. He seemed to have communicated with the power of thunder and lightning between heaven and earth. Rays of lightning appeared around him. Thunder was born out of thin air. and its divine might was unfathomable. Li Lingfeng had successfully used the Zhen trigram to attract the power of thunder and lightning from the 8 phases of heaven and earth to his body. The next moment, all the power of thunder and lightning gathered towards the trigram on his palms. 2 thunderballs were condensed in his palms, and an extremely explosive and terrifying aura spread out from Li Lingfeng's body. At this moment, Li Lingfeng seemed to have transformed into the god of thunder who was punishing on behalf of the heavens. Thunder and lightning were manipulated between his hands. The balls of lightning expanded, and thousands of lightning bolts coiled around the surface of the balls of lightning like silver snakes. Li Lingfeng had no other choice. The huge balls of lightning rushed out and bombarded the tiger claws that were descending. Suddenly, thousands of silver snakes danced in the air. Thunder and lightning shook the sky, illuminating the whole world. The terrifying power of thunder and lightning surged violently. The destructive power seemed to be able to destroy everything. Bang! The tiger claws that were as huge as hills directly grabbed the 2 balls of lightning and exploded them. 2 strong rays of light suddenly exploded in the sky. The light was so strong that people couldn't open their eyes. As of this moment, the spectators in the distance couldn't see or hear anything. Heaven and earth were silent, and everything was deathly silent. In the next moment, thousands of lightning bolts exploded in an instant. Thousands of dazzling lightning bolts were like sharp blades, tearing the void apart. Of course, they also shook the huge tiger claws that were descending. Hu Zhan furiously roared again and again. On the huge tiger claw, the white tiger divine markings emitted an unprecedentedly bright radiance, emitting an unprecedentedly powerful energy ripple. At this moment, the tiger claw seemed to have solidified, as if it was really a peerless, ferocious tiger extending its unstoppable sharp claws towards its prey. On the internet, thousands of lightning bolts were instantly dispersed by the light of the white tiger divine marks that burst out from the tiger claws. They couldn't do anything to stop the tiger claws. All the spectators by the lake, whether they were the outstanding successors of the 3 great Taoist sects or the young talents of the southern wilderness, all gasped. Hu Zhan was really strong, really domineering, really absolute. He was like an invincible god of war. Boom! With a loud sound, the ground undulated like waves. Li Lingfeng was actually slammed into the mud at the bottom of the lake by the huge tiger claws that were like a small mountain. The water in the lake had already been evaporated. When Hu Zhan's claw slammed down, a huge claw print immediately appeared at the bottom of the lake. The mud scattered in all directions. The huge tiger claws gradually faded and finally disappeared. Hu Zhan's tall and wild figure appeared. The small lake in the courtyard had completely collapsed. Cracks spread out from the claw print in the lake. The buildings on the lake had all collapsed into ruins. Pung! The huge claw print in the lake suddenly exploded. A figure rushed out from the mud and arrived in front of Hu Zhan in an instant. You. The eyes of the person who rushed out from the mud were red. He was like an injured beast. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. His chest was heaving up and down violently. He wanted to skin Hu Zhan alive. Li Lingfeng was defeated. Moreover, he was defeated even more miserably than Ren Wuming. His whole body was covered in mud, and his body was extremely dirty. This was simply a kind of humiliation to him. It made him mad. Humph, you have lost. Do you still want to fight? Hu Zhan glanced at Li Lingfeng disdainfully and said coldly. Hu Zhan had defeated 2 masters of the Taoism faction in a row. His momentum was unparalleled. Li Lingfeng was furious. He wanted to use the 8 symbols and 8 trigrams to fight Hu Zhan. However, he could not make up his mind. He knew that if he fought again, the result would be the same. Although Hu Zhan's level of cultivation was the same as Li Lingfeng's, they were both at the 9th layer of the awakening realm. He had not reached the transcending mortality realm, but the strength he displayed was much stronger than the cultivators at the 9th layer of the awakening realm. Don't be so proud. I am not the number 1 in the younger generation of the Taishan sect. Even if you have defeated me, it does not mean that the younger generation of the Taishan sect is inferior to the young masters of the southern wasteland. Li Lingfeng's cold voice was very ruthless. Although he was unwilling, he was even more unconvinced. As soon as Li Lingfeng said this, the young masters of the southern wasteland by the lake were all shocked. Was a master like Li Lingfeng not the number one in the younger generation of the Taishan sect? The three great Taoism faction did not seem to be as simple as it seemed on the surface. Could it be that they really had more masters who had not come out? Yes, 8 of them came, and it seems that Yang Sun invited 9 people. Could it be that the person who did not come is the number one in the three great Taoism faction? The owner of this place, the Duke's Crown Prince, Yang Sun, had long run off somewhere. Once the battle started, the crowd threw the Duke's Crown Prince to the back of their minds and directly ignored him. It was no wonder that Yang Sun hated these young masters of the southern wastelands so much. Being ignored by others was really vexing. Some people had already seen some clues. Li Lingfeng's words did not seem to be empty words. Although Yang Sun, the Duke's Crown Prince of the Dragon Emperor City, was not a big shot, since that person dared to ignore Yang Sun's invitation, it seemed that he had some ability. If he did not have someone to rely on, if he did not have the strength to ignore the Duke's Crown Prince, that person would have already come to the appointment. Of course, the group of young masters of the southern wasteland who came to the appointment did not come because of Yang Sun. These people wanted to give the people of the three great Taoism faction a show of strength. The young masters of the southern wasteland were also not willing to lose their limelight. Haha. The 5 young masters of the southern wasteland who had yet to make a move laughed uproariously. In that case, call out the strongest person among you to come out. Let's see if the people of our southern wasteland are stronger, or if the people of your Dao sect are a notch higher. A voice called out to Ren Wuming and the others. Under the willow tree by the lake, the descendants of the three great Taoism factions and the young masters of the southern wasteland stood in 2 different directions. The atmosphere between both parties was a little tense. At this moment, Lin Xian and Gue Teng, who were in confrontation, also retreated back to their respective camps. They could sense a power that was not any weaker than theirs from each other. The 2 of them were not willing to act rashly because they didn't have the confidence to suppress the other party. When Li Lingfeng heard the clamoring of the young masters of the southern wasteland, he couldn't help but feel anxious in his heart. He silently thought, "Junior brother Z, you went to invite Gu Fei. Why isn't he back yet? Don't say that I didn't give you guys a chance. I want the three great Taoism factions to lose wholeheartedly. You, and you, the 3 of you can come at me together." Hu Zhan pointed at Li Lingfeng, Ren Wuming, and Lin Xian as he spoke arrogantly. As the sound of his voice rang out, everyone was taken aback. Li Lingfeng and the others were indescribably shocked and angered. This young master of the White Tiger race, Hu Zhan, was truly arrogant to the point of not putting the most outstanding descendants of the three great Taoism factions in his eyes at all. In the distance, on a pavilion in the courtyard, the crown prince of the southern king, Yang Sun, stood shoulder to shoulder with a white-robed young man with a treasured saber hanging from his waist. They were coldly staring at the scene. "Brother Dongfang, seems like these hateful fellows from the southern wasteland are still stronger than the people from the three great Taoism factions." Yang Sun's voice contained a hint of unconcealable disappointment. The purpose of this Yang Sun was precisely to borrow the hands of Li Lingfeng and the others to cause the southern wasteland barbarian race to lose all face. But sadly, things didn't seem to go as he wished. Among the young experts of the southern wasteland barbarian race, only Hu Zhan from the White Tiger race acted, and it seemed that he was able to suppress the most outstanding descendants of the three great Taoism factions. The appearance of such a situation had already greatly exceeded Yang Sun's expectations. It wasn't that the people from the three great Taoism factions weren't powerful, but rather, Hu Zhan was simply too powerful. Too powerful. Hee. The best part is yet to come. Dongfang Long smiled confidently. As long as that person is willing to act, that Hu Zhan will be out of luck. Is that person really so powerful? Yang Sun turned his head and stared at Dongfang Long as he asked in bewilderment. From his point of view, this Hu Zhan was already very powerful, strong enough to suppress all the outstanding descendants of the three great Taoism factions. Among the three great Taoism factions, there was a successor that was even stronger than him? Yang Sun didn't dare to believe this. Naturally, the Central Plains is extremely flourishing. Within its 10,000 miles, there are tens of millions of people. How can a desolate place like the southern wasteland be able to compare to it? Dongfang Long spoke arrogantly, just when Yang Sun and Dongfang Long were conversing. An explosive sound that shook the entire space rang out. Boundless energy fluctuations gushed forth, erupting with intense light that illuminated the night sky. Terrifying cracks appeared on the ground. Although the pavilion Yang Sun and Dongfang Long were in was 200 to 300 zhang away from the battlefield, their bodies swayed unstably. The pavilion under their feet was on the verge of collapse, as though it would collapse at any moment. How powerful! The cultivation bases of these people are truly terrifying. The countenances of Yang Sun and Dongfang Long changed drastically, feeling extremely shocked in their hearts. The cultivation bases of these people were sufficient to show disdain for those of the same age. The reputation of the three great Taoism factions wasn't undeserved. Three figures were flung out from the center of the energy storm. A dim flying sword was sent flying over 100 zhang away. Boom! A deafening sound rang out, directly shattering a pavilion and causing it to fall into the ground. After that, a large crater also appeared on the ground, and a violet gold 8 trigrams was also blasted away by the impact. It soared through the air and smashed into a fake mountain. There were also tens of thousands of Dao talismans that were destroyed by the energy storm. A wild figure that resembled both a god and a devil stood proudly in the center of the energy storm. Bai Feiyang's gaze was like cold lightning, seemingly wanting to tear apart the void. His majestic tiger body was surrounded by numerous white tiger divine inscriptions, exuding boundless ferocity. The countenances of everyone changed. So it turned out that Li Lingfeng, Ren Wuming, and Lin Xian had joined forces in the end. But sadly, even if the three of them joined forces, it would still be difficult for them to contend against Hu Zhan. Hu Zhan's strength far surpassed their imaginations. Slapping away the flying sword with a claw, forcing the violet gold 8 trigrams back with a punch, and destroying tens of thousands of talismans with a flip of his palm. Hu Zhan displayed a terrifying cultivation base that could be said to be invincible among those of the same cultivation level. Chapter 141. The three great Taoist schools are nothing more than this. Under the moonlight, Hu Zhan's entire body was surrounded by the white tiger divine mark. His eyes were like lightning, and his tall tiger body was like an insurmountable mountain, causing people to feel endless pressure. His words traveled far, echoing in the sky above the courtyard. Li Lingfeng and the others all paled. Li Mingyao, Yichun, Zhu Yiqi, and the other Taoist disciples couldn't help but take a few steps forward, glaring at Hu Zhan. A fierce battle intent suddenly burst out from their bodies. What? Even your eldest senior brother isn't a match for him. Don't tell me you want to challenge our Lord, Hu? The 5 young experts from the southern wasteland all stepped forward and sneered. The descendants of the Taoist schools are not as good as the elites of the southern wasteland. This is an indisputable fact. You guys should save your energy. Another young expert from the southern wasteland said with disdain. What descendants of the Taoist schools? What a great title, but it turns out to be an undeserved reputation. Our Lord Hu alone is enough to sweep you all away. The young experts from the southern wasteland continued to attack the confidence of Li Mingyao and the others. Li Lingfeng, Ren Wuming, and the others couldn't help but become mad after hearing this. Their eyes turned red. These people were really too despicable. Meanwhile, the faces of Li Mingyao, Yichun, and the others became extremely ugly. The sword on Li Mengyao's back was buzzing and trembling. It seemed like it could soar into the sky at any time and turn into a flying sword. The piercingly cold sword aura caused the expressions of the young experts from the southern wasteland to change, who said that the descendants of the Taoist schools have an undeserved reputation. At this moment, a majestic voice came from afar. Although this voice wasn't very loud, it was clearly transmitted to everyone's ears. The few young people from the southern wasteland were stunned and stopped talking. Under the night sky, a white shadow flew past the many palaces and pavilions, heading towards this place. Before the person arrived, a great pressure as heavy as a mountain had already surged over. When Li Lingfeng heard this voice, a hint of joy appeared on his face. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and retrieved the purple gold 8 trigrams that was sent flying by Hu Zhan. And the flying sword that was also sent flying by Hu Zhan was also returned to its scabbard by Ren Wuming. In the face of absolute power, magical treasures, flying swords, and Dao techniques were all difficult to resist. Hu Zhan had used absolute power to defeat the most outstanding disciple of the younger generation of the 3 great Taoist sects. However, at this moment, Hu Zhan, who was standing in the middle of the dried-up lake, was unable to be happy. Because a figure that emitted terrifying fluctuations, had already arrived nearby. He felt threatened from this figure. Hu Zhan, who had the bloodline of the ancient white tiger Saint King flowing in his veins, was much more sensitive to danger than ordinary people. Shua. An indistinct silhouette appeared by the lake. The silhouette quickly became clearer. This was a dark-skinned man dressed in a white robe. His face was as sharp as a knife, and his eyebrows were long enough to reach his temples. His eyes were as bright as the stars, but his deep gaze was like an abyss, unable to see the bottom. He did not have a breathtakingly handsome appearance, but the outline of his face gave others a feeling of incomparable, unswerving determination. This was a powerful man, and his aura was somewhat similar to that of Hu Zhan. Who was the one who said those words just now? Who said that the successor of the Taoist sect has an undeserved reputation? This dark-skinned man was the reinforcement that Ziyu had brought, Gu Fei. Gu Fei's razor-sharp gaze swept across the faces of the young experts of the southern wasteland. The young experts of the southern wasteland immediately felt their hearts tremble, as if they were being stared at by a peerless, ferocious beast. Gu Fei's gaze made it difficult for them to look directly at him. No one dared to stand out. Gu Teng's expression also changed at this moment. As for the other 5 young people, other than a slender man with long purple hair, who did not reveal any expression of fear, the other 4 young people were all trembling with fear. Under the intense gaze of Gu Fei, they actually revealed cowardly expressions. Weren't you all clamoring just now? Why have you all become mute now? Yi Chen, the disciple of the Shangqing sect, took a step forward and loudly shouted while pointing at the Southern Wasteland disciples opposite him. When the 4 Southern Wasteland disciples heard this, they couldn't help but reveal a trace of awkwardness and panic. Hu Zhan and Gu Ting also felt a wave of displeasure. On the other hand, the young man in purple still had a calm expression. The moment Gu Fei arrived, he had already instantly identified that there were 3 very powerful people among the Southern Wasteland disciples. He couldn't help but be secretly shocked. The Southern Wasteland was indeed a place with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Among the 3 people, one was a tall and sturdy young man with a white shawl that was as ferocious as a tiger. The other was a yellow-faced young man who was less than 5 feet tall, had a pair of hands that almost hung down to his knees, a pointy forehead, and a seemingly hunchback. As for the last one, it was the young man in purple with a dignified appearance. The skinny, hunchback young man was Gu Teng. The young man in purple didn't reveal his identity. He seemed to be very low-key and mixed in with the 4 people. Until now, he had been watching coldly from the sidelines, as if this matter had nothing to do with him and had no intention of making a move. Just at this moment, Gu Fei's expression suddenly changed. He suddenly turned around and looked towards a pavilion in the distance. His eyes had already narrowed into a line, and within his eyes, there was a flicker of light. Damn! Dongfang Long, who was in the pavilion, was greatly shocked. He didn't even think and immediately turned to rush out from the back of the pavilion, wanting to flee. He originally wanted to watch the battle between Gu Fei and the disciples of the Southern Wasteland coldly. However, Gu Fei had already sensed his presence. He knew that if he didn't leave now, his life would be in danger. Brother Dongfang, the crown prince, Yang Sun, who was beside Dongfang Long, couldn't help but be shocked when he saw Dongfang Long suddenly turning around and leaving without saying a word. However, just when Yang Sun wanted to urge Dongfang Long to stay, a cold killing intent gushed forth, causing his entire body to tremble. This feeling was like being stared at by a venomous snake. His entire body turned cold as a terrifying pressure appeared in his heart. Swish! Gu Fei's silhouette instantly vanished from his original location. A gust of wind appeared out of nowhere and gushed forth. Everyone was shocked. Hu Zhan even thought that Gu Fei was going to act against those silk pants. His countenance involuntarily changed. Roar. A tiger's roar shook the heavens and earth. The image of a white tiger appeared. Hu Zhan was like a peerless, ferocious tiger as he ferociously pounced out from the lake. Boom. With a loud bang, everyone felt the ground violently quaking. Hu Zhan had instantly traversed over a distance of several dozens of meters and directly pounced down from the sky, blocking in front of those silk pants. Although those silk pants were ignorant and incompetent, relying on the power of their clans, they ran amok in Dragon Emperor City. If it was in normal times, Hu Zhan wouldn't even care about them. However, tonight was different from the past. If these guys were injured by someone else, he would also lose face. Gue Teng and the purple-haired young man instantly prepared for battle. Streaks of blue energy surrounded Gue Teng's body, and a huge black tortoise's image was faintly discernible in the water-like energy waves, emitting a terrifying wave that was as heavy as a mountain. However, the purple youth's battle form was very strange. On his back, there was a pair of purple energy wings. It was as if he could soar into the sky and fly above the 9 heavens in the next moment. However, they were wrong. Gu Fei was not going to attack those good-for-nothings. Instead, he was going to use the 8 Desolation Steps and chase after Dongfang Long with the speed of the 8 Desolation Steps. Swish, swish, swish. Like a phantom, Gu Fei flitted across the void as if he had teleported. In an instant, he arrived at the bottom of the pavilion. At this moment, Dongfang Long had just rushed out from the back of the pavilion. Dongfang Long didn't even look back. Instead, he directly rushed forward. He was very clear that he was definitely not able to defeat Gu Fei. Gu Fei flew up and directly leaped over the pavilion. He immediately caught sight of Dongfang Long, who was escaping in the rockery in the garden. Dongfang Long died. With a loud shout, Gu Fei descended from the sky like a god descending to the mortal world. The 5 elements extermination seal was displayed between his hands. A glaring aura that was like raging flames suddenly surged out from the seal that Gu Fei had formed. This was the fire seal of the 5 elements extermination seal. Vast yuan qi rippled out, and the power of the fire element was like a surging river, rushing down from the sky, sweeping towards Dongfang Long. This wasn't a real flame, but the power of fire that Gu Fei had used to communicate with the 5 elements inside and outside. This was the combination of martial and Tao. The terrifyingly high temperature could melt gold and melt iron. The all-encompassing fire seemed to want to ignite the void. The grass, trees, and rocks below all crumbled into the tiniest dust and dissipated into the air. Dongfang Long, who was shrouded in raging flames, sensed the terrifying power that surged down from the sky and immediately felt a sense of powerlessness in his heart. Gu Fei, whose cultivation had greatly improved, was really too powerful. In the distance, the expert of the White Tiger clan, Hu Zhan, couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart when he saw this scene. Haha, you want to kill me? You, Gu Fei, don't have that qualification. The next time we meet, I will definitely chop off your head. A scroll unfolded in Dongfang Long's hand, and the power of the Tao immediately surged out from the scroll. A water-blue light screen immediately enveloped Dongfang Long. In the next moment, the space that was enveloped by the light screen trembled. Swoosh! The light faded, and Dongfang Long disappeared into thin air. Rumble! The fire covered the sky and the earth and fiercely swooped down, enveloping the place where Dongfang Long was originally standing. The earth trembled, and all the tangible things that were enveloped by the blazing aura were all turned into dust. Outrageous, it's another scroll of the Tao of space. A figure shrouded in raging flames walked out from the sea of fire. The surging power of fire, following his footsteps, retreated like the tide and entered into his body. Behind Gu Fei, a garden was completely burned, and a pitch-black pit with a diameter of 10 feet was revealed on the ground, and it was still emitting smoke. It was black, and that was the scorched earth. There's another person in the pavilion. Gu Fei inclined his head and glanced at the pavilion in front of him. Swoosh. His silhouette directly disappeared from where he stood. See. On the pavilion, the crown prince, Yang Sun, involuntarily drew in a breath of cold air when he saw this scene. After that, he turned and fled. His martial arts were also quite outstanding. With a flash of his silhouette, he had already rushed to the window and was about to directly jump down from the pavilion. However, before he could jump, he felt the back of his neck being grabbed by 5 fingers, and he was lifted up, his feet leaving the ground. At this moment, Yang Sun felt the aura of death. And at this moment, an old man dressed in green silently appeared on the pavilion. Young man, don't be rash. Do you know who he is? That old man spoke. MHM? This person. Gu Fei turned his head and glanced at the old man. Although he appeared calm on the surface, he was incomparably shocked in his heart. He was secretly on guard. Even with his sharp spiritual sense, which had awakened the 9th heavenly layer, he actually couldn't sense the appearance of this old man. An expert at the transcending mortality realm? Gu Fei felt the threat from the old man. Chapter 142. I don't care who he is. Since he's Dongfang Long's friend, he's Gu Fei's, enemy. The best way to deal with enemies is to destroy them completely. How shuck. Gu Fei lifted Yang Sun like he was grabbing a little chick as he spoke in a sinister tone. Yang Sun's neck was grabbed by Gu Fei, and he couldn't move at all. He couldn't even speak. At this moment, he was extremely embarrassed and enraged to the extreme. No matter what, he was the crown prince of the Southern Desolate Prefecture King. In the future, he would inherit the title of the Southern Desolate Prefecture King. How could someone as arrogant as him not feel ashamed and enraged after being humiliated like this? He's the eldest son of the Southern Desolate Prefecture King, Yang Yuandao. If you kill him, it'll be very troublesome. The green-robed old man calmly spoke. He didn't seem to be anxious at all. Gu Fei couldn't help but frown when he heard this. To think that it was this fellow who gave him the invitation. It seemed like the commotion tonight was definitely caused by this fellow, and Dongfang Long. Gu Fei had already guessed most of the situation. That Dongfang Long merely wanted to borrow Yang Sun's strength to deal with him. Despicable bastard. If he lands in my hands, I'll definitely make him beg for death. Gu Fei had never hated someone so much before. Dongfang Long was the first. Gu Fei, I, Hu Zhan, challenge you now. If you have the guts, don't be a coward. An insolent voice rang out from outside the pavilion. Damn it, who is this Hu Zhan? Gu Fei wasn't present earlier and didn't know where Hu Zhan came from. However, there was no need to doubt Hu Zhan's strength. You're the expert protecting this fellow in the dark? Gu Fei's eyes were deep and cold. At this moment, he was glaring at the green-robed old man. You can say that. The old man replied. Gu Fei coldly laughed. He didn't say anything else and directly threw Yang Sun towards the green-robed old man like a broken sack. Just like what the green-robed old man had said, if he killed Yang Sun, he would be in great trouble. After all, the overlord of Dragon Emperor City was Yang Yuandao. If Zhang Tai killed his son, Yang Yuandao would never let it go. The power behind the Southern Desolate Prefecture King was Yin Country, a super empire with a territory of 10,000 miles. If he offended the royal clan of Yin Country because of killing Yang Sun, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. The green-robed old man stretched out his hand and caught Yang Sun. After that, he directly leaped out of the pavilion like a wisp of smoke, silently disappearing into the distance. In the blink of an eye, he vanished into the night sky. It was as if the people outside the pavilion did not notice the old man's appearance and departure. It seemed that the people outside did not notice the old man's appearance or his departure. Even Gu Fei, who had already broken into the awakened 9th heaven, found it hard to see through the depth of this old man. This old man's cultivation was a lot stronger than Beitang Yi from the Beitang clan. He should be on the same level as Zhao Xuanji. Gu Fei knew how terrifying Zhao Xuanji was. Gu Fei knew that even if he met Zhao Xuanji now, he might not be able to contend against him and could only retreat. Of course, with Gu Fei's current strength that was comparable to a cultivator who had just entered the ascended mortality stage, He was confident that he could retreat even if he couldn't defeat Zhao Xuanji. Good, good, good. Among the practitioners of the younger generation, there has never been anyone who dares to ignore me, Hu Zhan. Gu Fei, you are the first. Hu Zhan's cold words came from outside the building. His words were filled with rage. Gu Fei looked out of the window and saw a dozen people gathered in front of the pavilion. They were divided into two camps, one for the young cultivators of the southern desolate prefecture and the other for the three great Dao sects. The one standing in front of the southern desolate prefecture cultivators was the white-haired young man. The white-haired young man coldly snorted and directly punched forward. A violent force suddenly erupted like a volcano. White tiger runes condensed in front of his fist to form a huge white tiger, which fiercely pounced toward Gu Fei. When the white tiger appeared, a strong wind rose. Its ferocious power was unfathomable, and an extremely fierce killing intent filled the air. Everyone quickly retreated to the distance. In a battle between two great experts, it would not be worth it if they were careless and ended up in a disaster. Gu Fei's feet stepped on the ground, and his body suddenly shot into the sky like an arrow. With a boom, he directly broke a big hole in the roof of the pavilion and rushed out. In the instant that Gu Fei rushed out of the pavilion, a huge tremor came from below. In the midst of a muffled rumble, dust soared into the sky. The ferocious white tiger condensed from the unparalleled fist energy actually completely collapsed the entire pavilion in an instant. 8 steps, 8 kills. Gu Fei shouted in a deep voice. He directly stepped out in the air. Swoosh! With a swoosh sound, he left an afterimage in his original position and instantly appeared above Hu Zhan's head. He took a step towards Hu Zhan's head. A terrifying force was vast and mighty under Gu Fei's feet. It was as if a huge mountain was descending from the sky, causing Hu Zhan's expression to instantly change. Gu Fei's strength made him feel a great pressure. The temperament of Gu Fei and Hu Zhan were somewhat similar. Both of them were extremely powerful figures, and both of them were similarly belligerent. When these two people met, brilliant sparks were bound to appear. Roar! Hu Zhan roared, and the white tiger divine crest rushed out of his body. His tall body was as if it was cast from iron, and it was incomparably domineering. He directly smashed his fist upwards, and a resplendent white light lit up the night sky. The terrifying force went against the sky and attacked. Boom! A loud sound shook the heavens, and the surging force shook the heaven and earth. The resplendent and dazzling light was so dazzling that everyone couldn't open their eyes. The huge wave of air that exploded out caused the sky to seem like it was blowing up, and an enormous pressure enveloped all directions. Rumble! The ground under Hu Zhan's feet instantly shattered, and the soil fragments scattered in all directions. The spectators cried out in surprise and dodged even further away. The ground was directly stomped by Hu Zhan, and a huge pit with a diameter of 15 meters was directly formed. As for Gu Fei, he instead soared into the sky, and he was blasted high up into the sky by the explosive force. At the same time, his second step was immediately taken downwards. Swoosh! Like teleportation, Gu Fei instantly closed in on top of Hu Zhan's head. Rumble! Under Gu Fei's feet, there was a dull sound of wind and thunder. Compared to the previous step, this second step was even stronger, fiercer, and more terrifying. The space under Gu Fei's feet trembled. 8 desolate steps, 8 steps, 8 kills. Every step he took, the force would superimpose with the force of the previous step, wave after wave. It was truly a killing technique. White Tiger Emperor's Fist, Hu Zhan shouted in a deep voice. His face was solemn, and the white tiger divine crest on his right fist unceasingly revolved, bursting out with resplendent light. When he punched out, it was like a meteor streaking across the sky. That indomitable tyrannical momentum made everyone's heart palpitate. Boom! With another loud sound, Hu Zhan's fist and Gu Fei's foot instantly collided. Where they collided, ripples spread out. That was a terrifying destructive force. But the ripples spread out, and everywhere they passed, the ground collapsed. The soil and stones silently turned into dust. It was extremely terrifying. The extremely compressed force exploded. This force was too strong. It shook the heaven and earth. Hu Zhan continuously took 3 steps back, and the powerful rebounding force was directed to his feet, and then to the ground. With every step Hu Zhan took, the ground under his feet would tremble. Hideous cracks spread out from his feet, and the nearby buildings all cracked and collapsed. Gu Fei flew hundreds of feet back. Before he landed, he flipped over, and both his feet forcefully supported himself on a fake mountain. Boom! The fake mountain under his feet instantly exploded, and Gu Fei used this force to support himself again, and fiercely rushed towards Hu Zhan. Hu Zhan's expression changed. He coldly looked at Gu Fei, who was rushing over, and indifferently wiped away the trace of blood at the corner of his mouth, then took a deep breath. Hu Zhan's abdomen suddenly swelled up, his face flushed red, and the veins on his forehead throbbed. His abdomen was like a pregnant woman who was 10 months pregnant. 8 steps to the extreme, Gu Fei's movement speed was extremely fast. He left behind a series of afterimages in the void, emitting a mighty pressure, and in the blink of an eye, he was in front of Hu Zhan. Gu Fei was about to make a move. Roar! At this moment, Hu Zhan let out a roar that shook the heavens and the earth. In the void, ripples visible to the naked eye appeared. Everyone present, including Gu Fei, could not hear any sound in their ears in that instant. The heavens and the earth seemed to have suddenly become silent. It was absolute silence. The white tiger roared at the sky, and its ferocious might dominated the heavens and the earth. This kind of terrifying sound wave could destroy everything, and it could not be resisted. The sound of killing was formless, but it could cause terrifying damage to people. The sound of killing intent that covered the heavens and the earth instantly enveloped the charging Gu Fei. Gu Fei roared and covered his ears with both hands as he flew backwards. The terrifying sound wave destroyed everything, shattered everything, and strangled everything. Not only did it cause Gu Fei to suffer a great impact, but the surrounding rocks and plants also turned into dust silently like snowflakes. The earth trembled violently, undulating like waves, and did not calm down for a long time. Boom! The flying Gu Fei directly smashed through a fake mountain, and then smashed through a half-collapsed pavilion before stopping his retreat. The sound was silent, and the great Tao was formless. Although this tiger roar sound killing technique was not directed at the spectators, not a single person present was spared. All of them instantly lost their hearing and felt a splitting headache, as if thousands of heavy hammers were pounding on their heads. It was extremely unbearable. Apart from Li Lingfeng and the other Taoism disciples, Gu Teng of the Black Tortoise clan of the Southern Wilderness, and the purple-haired young man who could still barely hold on, the 4 profligate sons of the Southern Wilderness had already fallen to the ground when the sound wave appeared, rolling around in pain. Seeing the 4 fellows in such a sorry state, Gu Teng could not help but feel ashamed. Only the purple-haired young man still had a calm expression, as if it had nothing to do with him. Chapter 143. The power of the tiger roar sonic kill was extremely terrifying. The destructive sound wave could destroy everything. Gu Fei, who was caught off guard, was directly blown away, and his divine soul was shaken. The terrifying sound wave made him suffer a great impact. His 6 senses were shaken violently, especially his ears. For a moment, Gu Fei couldn't hear anything. Even when he saw things, he could only see double. Roar! Gu Fei immediately operated the Xin Qi in his body to protect his entire body and stabilize his 6 senses. The power of the 5 elements circulated in his body, instantly relieving the discomfort in his body. Whoosh! At that instant, a gust of wind blew at Gu Fei's face, raising a cloud of dust. The ferocious aura in the wind made Gu Fei feel threatened. Retreat! Without any hesitation, Gu Fei decisively retreated. Boom! A loud sound was heard. The ground trembled violently. The ground where he was standing was shattered and turned into a huge pit in an instant. It was as if he was hit by a meteorite that fell from the sky. A tall figure walked out of the pit. White tiger divine runes circled around his body. His imposing figure exuded a majestic aura. Bai Fei Wu's tiger eyes were filled with endless ferocity. No one dared to look at him directly. Hu Zhan of the White Tiger clan, This young expert, who was like a fierce tiger, actually displayed a disdainful aura. Seeing this, Gu Fei's pupils shrank. This Hu Zhan is definitely a rare opponent. Unfortunately, he will become my whetstone. Hu Zhan, the southern wasteland expert, was only in his early 20s. However, he already had a peerless cultivation base that allowed him to look down on his peers. His tall body seemed to be made of steel, giving people an extremely strong feeling. His bronze-colored skin shone brilliantly. That was the bloodline of the ancient holy beast, the white tiger, emitting a strong power, making people feel that he was strong and terrifying. The might of the ancient holy beast made people tremble from the bottom of their hearts. Is this crazy tiger going to risk his life? Gue Tong, the young expert of the Black Tortoise clan, who was watching the battle from afar, said. At this moment, even the mysterious young man in purple revealed a trace of nervousness, and his eyes were filled with splendor. As for Li Lingfeng and the rest, they were watching the scene in the distance nervously. No one knew better than them how powerful Hu Zhan was. The white tiger mystical ability could be said to be invincible among those of the same level. Li Lingfeng, the eldest senior brother of the Taishan sect, Ren Wuming, the eldest senior brother of the Guangqing Celestial sect, and the eldest senior brother of the Shangqing sect, represented the strongest of the younger generation of the three great Daoist sects. But even with the three of them working together and using all their treasures, they were still defeated by Hu Zhan's white tiger's ferocious might. This was enough to show how terrifying Hu Zhan was. The successors of the Dao sect all broke out in cold sweat for Gu Fei. Guangqing's junior, Li Mengyao, bit her lower lip and clenched her fists tightly. Her beautiful eyes, which were filled with endless spirit, looked at Gu Fei nervously. Junior brother Gu Fei will definitely win, Ziyu murmured. He was very confident in Gu Fei. After all, to Ziyu, Gu Fei's strength was unparalleled among those of the same age. In the 9 vein trials, Gu Fei's majestic appearance of obtaining first place had long been deeply imprinted in Ziyu's mind. As a level 8 awakening plane cultivator, he defeated Li Lingfeng, a level 9 eldest senior brother. This was something that had never happened in the Taishan sect. Ziyu believed that nothing was impossible when it came to Gu Fei. Roar. At this moment, a loud roar came from the field. Hu Zhan's white hair danced wildly, and 2 terrifying rays of light shone from his eyes. He was wild and incomparably ferocious, and his appearance was frightening to the extreme. Pong! Hu Zhan's shirt instantly exploded, turning into thousands of pieces that danced in the air. Tiger stripes began to appear on his naked upper body. They were the white tiger divine tattoos. You're very strong. You're the first person to make me use my full strength. Hu Zhan's eyes flickered with a fierce light as he stared at Gu Fei and said in a low voice. His sharp and forceful eyes revealed a trace of imperceptible madness. Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Could it be that in the previous battle, Hu Zhan held back? He didn't use his full strength? If that was really the case, then this Hu Zhan was really too terrifying. Is that so? You're not bad yourself. At this moment, Gu Fei's 6 senses, which had been thrown into chaos by Hu Zhan's shocking roar, had already gradually recovered. Next, you must be prepared to die, because even I cannot completely control this power. Hu Zhan's strength was unparalleled, and his murderous aura filled the sky. His words were not a threat, but the truth. Very good. Thank you for the reminder. Gu Fei did not have any expression because he would not hold back either. He just happened to use this Hu Zhan to verify the 5 elements annihilation seal technique that he had just comprehended. Divine tiger form, bloodline awakening. Hu Zhan let out a loud roar that shook the heavens and earth. The white tiger divine tattoo appeared on his body. This time, the divine tattoo did not rush out from his body. The white tiger divine tattoo began to emit a dazzling divine light. Every divine tattoo emitted a vast and mighty energy wave. At this moment, everyone had an illusion that Hu Zhan seemed to have turned into a peerless, ferocious tiger. A horrifying and violent aura swept out. The space where Hu Zhan was at began to tremble, as if a prehistoric giant beast had awakened in his body. His entire body was covered with dragon-like muscles, and a layer of dazzling brilliance flowed on his skin. His aura was monstrous and invincible. Yes, the current Hu Zhan gave off a shocking feeling of invincibility. He seemed to be able to shake the heavens and earth with every step he took. This is his true strength? Not only Li Lingfeng and the other successors of the three great Tao sects, but also the southern wilderness cultivators who were present were all shocked by the scene in front of them. Gu Fei's expression also became incomparably solemn. He felt a great pressure from Hu Zhan's body. Whoosh! The dust on the ground suddenly rose up and then spread in all directions. Without any warning, Hu Zhan disappeared from where he stood. Gu Fei's eyelids twitched. So fast. Without thinking too much, Gu Fei's mind could no longer keep up with the rhythm of his movements. Instinctively, he threw a punch forward to block. A dazzling golden aura appeared in front of his fist, and then surged forward like a surging river. This was not a theurgy, nor was it a Taoist technique. It was a power that originated from martial. It was this kind of most direct power that shook the heavens and earth in front of him. A strong wind swept out with Gu Fei as the center, sweeping up the dust and even the shattered mountain rocks at his feet. Boom! It was like a muffled thunder coming from the horizon. The sound was not loud, but it was equally shocking. The explosive power tore through the void, and the air also exploded. A tiger claw, a real tiger claw with flesh and blood, violently collided with Gu Fei's fist, which was as resplendent as the sun. The two figures flew back like lightning, and then immediately pounced at each other. Roar! The white tiger roared to the sky, and divine markings appeared. A huge tiger claw, surrounded by the divine markings of the white tiger, directly slammed down at Gu Fei. Under the tiger claw, a strong wind blew, and the powerful force shook the void. 8 desolation steps, 8 extreme steps. Gu Fei used the 8 desolation steps and transformed into an extremely faint light shadow. In an instant, he rushed out from under the tiger claw. 5 elements extermination. All things exterminate. Mysterious seals were formed between Gu Fei's hands, and a 5-colored light appeared on his body. The seals formed between Gu Fei's hands seemed to communicate with the 5 elements of heaven and earth, drawing in the power of the 5 elements of heaven and earth and annihilating it towards Hu Zhan. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, the 5 elements interacted, reinforcing and restraining each other, forming a terrifying power that could exterminate everything. Gu Fei displayed the terrifying battle technique of technique nearing Tao. The power of the 5 elements flowed between his hands, but they were clearly separated. There was no fusion of the power, only the impact of the power. When the power collided with each other, the power displayed was even more terrifying than a single power. Bang! Hu Zhan was directly sent flying. Everyone was shocked and dumbfounded. The unparalleled Hu Zhan was actually sent flying. This was simply unbelievable. How is this possible? Gu Ting murmured. He knew that Hu Zhan had already used his trump card. The power of the bloodline awakening could definitely nearly double Hu Zhan's strength. A doubling of strength, what kind of concept was that? Gu Tang did not dare to imagine, but Hu Zhan was still sent flying. This was an indisputable fact. This person called Gu Fei. Gu Tang could not help but feel fear towards Gu Fei. Junior brother Gu, good job. Ziyu could not help but shout. Seeing that Gu Fei had the upper hand, the crowd of Tao Gate disciples was extremely excited. The battle between Gu Fei and Hu Zhan was related to the reputation of the 3 great Tao Gates. At this moment, the descendants of the 3 great Tao Gates temporarily put aside their sectarian bias and cheered for Gu Fei together. However, the expressions of the southern wilderness cultivators at the scene were not so good. Swoosh! Gu Fei's movement technique was as fast as lightning. In the next moment, he was in front of Hu Zhan again. Without any words, he directly formed a seal. Earth element seal technique? The power of the thick earth surged between Gu Fei's hands. Gray air waves, like waves, drowned Hu Zhan in an instant. The gray air enveloped the surroundings. Gu Fei seemed to have connected with the earth. With his own earth element power, he communicated with the earth element power of heaven and earth, guiding the endless thick earth chi of the earth to obliterate Hu Zhan. Under the envelopment of the thick earth chi, Hu Zhan roared again and again. Indistinctly, One could see a white tiger pouncing ferociously under the gray brilliance, setting off endless ferocious might. Hu Zhan roared. With a pair of tiger claws, he directly tore apart the seal of the earth element power and rushed out from the envelopment of the gray air. The white tiger divine marks emitted a dazzling divine light. In the next moment, the white tiger divine marks rushed out of Hu Zhan's body and turned into light blades, slashing towards Gu Fei in an overwhelming manner. Every light blade was like a heavenly blade, emitting a vast and terrifying energy wave. As they hurriedly slashed across the void, an extremely dense sound of tearing through the air could be heard. 5 elements as one, break all divine powers, Gu Fei lightly shouted. He completely ignored the thousands of light blades that were slashing towards him. He directly formed a seal and temporarily combined the power of the 5 elements into one, unleashing the strongest power he could currently display. With the 5 elements annihilation seal, Gu Fei could temporarily combine the 5 elements, but he could only maintain it for an extremely short period of time. If he wanted to truly use the battle technique of combining the 5 elements as one, unless he broke through to the transcending mortality realm, it was absolutely difficult to do so. A short period of combining the 5 elements as one was already Gu Fei's limit. He could not maintain it for long. The power of combining the 5 elements as one was unimaginable. As Gu Fei formed a profound seal, a terrifying energy storm filled with the aura of destruction surged out from his hand seal. At this moment, the heavens and earth trembled. Hu Zhan felt a great danger. All the hair on his body instantly stood on end. This was an extreme crisis that was enough to endanger his life. Rumble. The energy storm of combining the 5 elements as one directly shattered the light blades formed by the white tiger divine marks. Gu Fei's hands formed a profound seal that streaked across the sky like a meteor, instantly imprinting itself onto Hu Zhan's chest. Bang! Chapter 144. You may be strong, but I'm stronger than you. Gu Fei displayed his powerful battle prowess. He strode towards Hu Zhan, who was blown away. His words were filled with confidence. Everyone was shocked by the power he displayed. On the internet, a powerful person must have powerful abilities. This was undeniable. Hu Zhan was undoubtedly powerful, but it was a pity that he met Gu Fei. The outcome of this battle seemed to have been decided long ago. Gu Fei wasn't a cultivator, nor was he a divine arts practitioner. He was a martial artist. A martial artist who had cultivated successfully would find it hard to find a worthy opponent among the same level cultivators. This wasn't a lie. The current Gu Fei even had the ability to fight against a cultivator who had just entered the transcending mortality realm. In the awakened 9 heavens, no one had such heaven-defying battle prowess. However, as a martial artist, Gu Fei's battle prowess was heaven-defying. It made it possible for him to challenge a higher-level cultivator. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 8 desolate steps, 8 extreme steps. Gu Fei seemed to have teleported. Everywhere he passed, he left behind afterimages. In just an instant, he caught up to Hu Zhan. Roar! Hu Zhan tried his best to stop his retreat, but he still couldn't help but retreat. The power of the 5 elements as one was too strong. Even if he used all his strength to block it, it was hard to resolve. Although the power of the 5 elements as one could only be released in an extremely short period of time and couldn't be sustained for long, it was enough to heavily injure Hu Zhan, causing him to spit mouthfuls of blood. Boom! Hu Zhan directly smashed a huge hole in the high wall of the courtyard. He rushed out of the courtyard, and the brick fragments scattered in all directions. Wood element Madra technique, 10,000 purple wood. Gu Fei chased out from the hole in the high wall with his extreme movement technique. When he got close to Hu Zhan, the wood element Madra of the 5 elements extermination Madra had already formed. The incomparably profound Madra technique was pressed forward. A terrifying energy wave suddenly exploded like a volcano. A bluish-green aura surged out from the Madra technique and swept forward. The 5 elements extermination seal art had already touched upon the Tao. The edge of the wood seal was the embodiment of the martial way. The moment Gu Fei's wood seal appeared, it was as if his own wood elemental power had connected with the essence of the plants in the world. Within the jade-green light, There seemed to be a dense, endless stretch of giant wood that rushed towards Hu Zhan. Bang! Hu Zhan was sent flying out once more. Roar! Hu Zhan, who had fallen to the ground, pretended to be crazy. He was like a ferocious beast that had reached a dead end. He roared at the sky, and a torrential force surged out from his body. Hu Zhan wildly danced about, and his eyes gradually became blood-red, flickering with a crazed blood-red light. Whoosh! Hu Zhan pounced directly at Gu Fei. He didn't use any divine ability, nor did he put up any defense. His movements were actually like those of a ferocious beast. Was he courting death? The spectators from afar were shocked by Hu Zhan's crazy actions. However, Gue Tong of the Black Tortoise clan frowned at this moment. He thought of a terrifying matter. Could it be? Gue Tong's expression was extremely grave as he stared at the seemingly crazy Hu Zhan. 8 desolation steps. With a single step, Gu Fei directly sent the ferocious pouncing Hu Zhan flying. What's going on? Gu Fei felt that something was wrong. Roar! Hu Zhan, who had rolled on the ground, let out another roar and crawled up from the ground. He didn't seem to be injured, but the vast energy fluctuations coming from his body had become even stronger. Oh no, the power in his body is really starting to go out of control. Gue Tong's expression was extremely ugly. He knew the consequences of losing control of his power. That was the power that originated from the bloodline of the ancient sacred beast, the white tiger. Even though the white tiger bloodline in Hu Zhan's body had been passed down for so long and had become extremely thin, the power was still extremely powerful and terrifying. If it went out of control, the consequences would be very serious. This was because, apart from the power that originated from the bloodline, there was also the ferocious bestial nature of the ancient sacred beast, the white tiger. Once the power that originated from the white tiger bloodline went out of control, the bestial nature in the bloodline would also erupt. In this way, his human nature would be replaced by the bestial nature in the bloodline, and he would turn into a ferocious tiger in human form. His power would also rise to a terrifying level. Hausha-roar! Hu Zhan roared incessantly like a ferocious tiger. From the frenzy in his eyes, it could be seen that the bestial nature had already completely taken over his mind. Hu Zhan, who was controlled by the bestial nature, became extremely berserk. At this moment, the white tiger divine tattoo on his body emitted an unprecedentedly powerful light. Vast power surged out from Hu Zhan's body wave after wave, forming a terrifying energy storm around him. Roar! After a crazy roar, a blood-red ferocious light shot out from Hu Zhan's eyes. In the next moment, he leapt high into the air, and like a ferocious tiger pouncing on its prey, he hurriedly pounced towards Gu Fei. The vast and mighty astral wind assaulted his face, causing pain, as if he was being cut by a sharp knife. At this moment, Hu Zhan was more powerful than ever before, and more dangerous than ever before. It was as if he had transformed into a ferocious tiger that only knew how to kill, and he viewed Gu Fei as his prey. The terrifying energy waves caused Gu Fei's heart to tremble. Streams of divine light that revolved around Hu Zhan's body made Gu Fei feel danger. That kind of divine light was as dazzling as a sword immortal's flying sword. It was formed by the white tiger divine tattoo. Wherever the divine light passed, it left behind a pitch-black trace, as if the void was being torn apart. That was the terrifying power contained within the white tiger bloodline. At this moment, it burst out. Compared to when Hu Zhan was awake and transformed the white tiger divine tattoo into thousands of light blades, it was unknown how many times more powerful it was. Whoosh! Gu Fei left behind an afterimage on his original spot and hurriedly retreated. Boom! The afterimage was instantly destroyed, and the ground was completely turned into dust by the terrifying power. The crazy Hu Zhan, with a pounce, shook the heaven and earth. Hu Zhan, who was dominated by his bestial nature and had lost his rationality, only had bestial instincts at this moment. How could he still be Gu Fei's opponent? Gu Fei directly appeared behind him, and a hand knife chopped towards the back of Hu Zhan's neck. Don't harm his life. Just as Gu Fei's hand knife was about to chop Hu Zhan, a loud shout suddenly came from the side. Then, Gu Fei felt an extremely cold gust of wind assaulting his body from behind. At the same time, a violent power rushed towards Gu Fei like a raging sea. Someone attacked him. Someone was afraid that he would kill Hu Zhan, and the person who attacked had an extremely high cultivation. Oomph! Gu Fei let out a cold laugh and directly punched towards the incoming expert, while his hand knife did not stop at all. Bang! It chopped the back of Hu Zhan's neck. Just as Gu Fei's hand knife chopped Hu Zhan, his expression immediately changed greatly, and he secretly cursed in his heart. It was as if his palm had chopped onto an indestructible piece of fine iron. Not only did it not injure Hu Zhan, it even caused his palm to feel a burst of pain. Whoosh! A tiger claw with the white tiger's divine markings emitted a sharp claw light that was more than a foot long and swept towards Gu Fei's chest. In front of him was a tiger claw, and behind him was a powerful enemy. For a moment, Gu Fei actually fell into a predicament of being attacked from both front and back. Retreat. Without any hesitation, he directly retreated, because the greatest threat to him was the terrifying tiger claw that seemed to be able to pierce through the void. Boom! With a loud sound, Gu Fei's fist fiercely collided with the attacking person. Unexpectedly, Gu Fei's fist seemed to have hit a huge mountain. Although it shook the expert, his own retreating momentum was forcibly stopped. Pung! The clothes on his chest and abdomen were instantly torn by the tiger claw. The sharp claw force was like a divine weapon, and it ruthlessly swept onto Gu Fei's chest and abdomen. Without any suspense, amidst everyone's cries of surprise, Gu Fei was directly swept away by the extremely ferocious claw force. Only then did he clearly see that the person who attacked him was the short and skinny hunchback youth who seemed to be carrying a turtle shell on his back. Hu Zhan, who had fallen into a frenzy, roared. His limbs pushed off the ground, and he turned into a white light, chasing after Gu Fei, who was sent flying. How preposterous! Gu Fei only felt as if his internal organs had been dug out by Hu Zhan's claw. Although he wasn't cut into two by the extremely sharp claw force, his internal organs suffered a violent shock. A wave of hot blood surged up Gu Fei's throat, but he forcefully swallowed it back down. No one had expected things to turn out like this. They all stared dumbfoundedly at the scene in front of them. At this moment, when Gu Fei saw Hu Zhan fiercely pouncing towards him again, he couldn't help but be furious. I originally didn't want to take your life, but you're forcing me to kill you. When his life was threatened, Gu Fei couldn't care so much anymore. He began to draw the essence of the divine weapon in his body to gather in his abdomen. Then, he suddenly stopped. He opened his mouth, and a resplendent purple sword light instantly shot out from his mouth, killing towards Hu Zhan. Sword Qi, Flying Sword? The three outstanding successors of the Guangxing immortal sect, who were watching from the side, couldn't help but be shocked when they saw Gu Fei actually spit out sword light. How does he know the way of the sword? Ren Wuming couldn't help but frown. As for Guangxing's junior, Li Mingyao, her delicate little mouth was wide open as she looked at Gu Fei with a face full of shock. Hum. A sword hum resounded through the entire area. The purple sword light that shot out from Gu Fei's mouth instantly increased by 10 zhong. It was as vigorous as a soaring dragon, emitting extremely terrifying sword qi fluctuations. The purple sword light cut through the void, instantly arriving in front of Hu Zhan, who was pouncing over. As long as the sword light descended and twisted, Hu Zhan would be directly killed on the spot. The essence of the divine weapon that Gu Fei had refined into his body was not ordinary. This was Gu Fei's final trump card, his trump card. However, at this moment, Gu Fei's trump card was forced to be displayed in front of everyone by Hu Zhan. Just as Hu Zhan was about to die under Gu Fei's sword light, a huge hand suddenly appeared in the sky. Then, it grabbed Hu Zhan, who had already been completely controlled by his bestial nature, and retreated. Humph! Gu Fei sneered. Purple lightning flashed across the sky. The purple sword light actually made a turn in the air, directly killing towards the huge hand. Regardless of whether it was the practitioners of the younger generation of the southern wilderness, or Li Lingfeng and the other successors of the three great Taoist sects, they were all shocked by this action of Gu Fei. The transformation of the primordial spirit, thousands of miles away, This was a huge primordial spirit hand cultivated by a great cultivator. It was a manifestation of the Tao connotation. Obviously, a great cultivator had made a move. Someone did not want Hu Zhan to die under Gu Fei's sword light. If it was an ordinary cultivator, they would have stopped a long time ago. However, Gu Fei was extremely daring. Not only did he not stop, but he also manipulated the sword light to kill the huge hand that was descending from the sky. It was really crazy. In front of a great cultivator, even a practitioner of the transcending mortality realm was like an ant. With a flip of the palm, they could destroy a large number of them, let alone a practitioner of the awakening self realm. Gu Fei's battle intent was like a rainbow. Under the perception of the qi, the dazzling sword light formed by the divine weapon's essence immediately went against the natural order to kill. It did not matter if it was a great cultivator or a small cultivator. It did not matter if it could be provoked or not provoked. Roar. In the huge hand, a crazy white tiger was roaring. It was not a real white tiger, but the image of a white tiger that was condensed by the white tiger's divine markings. However, no matter how hard Hu Zhan struggled, no matter how powerful he was, he could not escape from the control of the huge hand. He was completely suppressed. Interesting. It's a broken weapon soul. I'll take it. These words rang out from the distant sky. Almost at the same time, an energy storm swept out from the large hand and swept towards the purple sword light that was coming for him. The person seemed to have noticed the extraordinariness of the purple sword light. He actually wanted to collect the sword light with his great spiritual power. The energy storm that swept out from the huge hand wrapped the sword light in an instant. The light of the sword light immediately dimmed. At the same time, Gu Fei's expression changed greatly on the ground. He could no longer maintain his composure. This was because the moment the power from the huge hand wrapped around the dazzling purple sword light, he actually could not sense the existence of the weapon's essence. Not only did the primordial spirit hand wrap around Hu Zhan, it even imprisoned the divine armament's essence energy that Gu Fei released. Furthermore, it rose into the sky, and in an instant, it soared into the sky. How dare you? Gu Fei could not help but panic. The weapon's essence was extremely important to him. It was his life-saving talisman. It had already allowed him to escape death several times. After losing the weapon's essence, Gu Fei had lost his greatest reliance. Just as Gu Fei thought that he was about to lose the weapon's essence, a huge hand made of flames suddenly appeared. With a mighty roaring flame, it directly intercepted the huge hand that was wrapped around Hu Zhan and the weapon's essence. Taoist Chaoyang, what do you want? An angry roar came from afar. The rolling sound waves caused the sky and earth to tremble. A great pressure immediately spread out, causing everyone's expression to change. Is it Grandmaster Chaoyang of Shaoyang Peak? Li Lingfeng, Ziyu, and the other disciples of Taixian's sect couldn't help but feel delighted. Leave the thing of Taixian's sect. A calm voice drifted from another direction of Dragon Emperor City. Closely after that, the fiery hand directly intercepted the immortal weapon's essence, which was bound by that person's power. Humph! The person who had secretly saved Hu Zhan seemed unwilling, but he also didn't want to fight with Taoist Chaoyang. The huge hand wrapped Hu Zhan and quickly left. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared from everyone's sight. After the huge hand made of the mysterious person's primordial spirit retreated, the hand made of flames in the night sky also dimmed and finally disappeared into the void. The two great cultivators didn't show up. Even though they were thousands of miles away from each other, they had already fought for a short while in the sky above Dragon Emperor City. Although everyone was shocked by the great cultivator's magical ability, they couldn't help but yearn for it. If they had such a cultivation base, a bright purple sword light shot down from the sky, tearing the void and making a sound like tearing silk. The next moment, this sword light entered Gu Fei's body. The weapon's essence that had been smelted into his body reintegrated into Gu Fei's body and traveled through his qi and blood. After a period of refinement, this weapon's essence became more and more pure. In tonight's battle, Gu Fei not only defeated the most outstanding young powerhouse in the southern wilderness, Hu Zhan of the White Tiger clan, but he also learned something about the weapon's essence in his body. The weapon soul is broken. Could it be that the sword hilt passed down by the Grandmaster of Green Spirit Peak has an unimaginable origin? It's actually a peerless weapon that has given birth to a weapon soul? Gu Fei couldn't help but be shocked. The mysterious yin-yang jade pendant and the sword hilt passed down by his master all had a great origin and unknown secrets. This made Gu Fei faintly feel uneasy. Just a strand of essence energy from a divine weapon was enough to attract the attention of a grand cultivator. If others knew that he had the yin-yang fish jade pendant that could increase his cultivation speed by 10 times, those grand cultivators would definitely make a move on him. And I'd better keep a low profile in the future, Gu Fei thought. He didn't want to attract others' attention. At this moment, the people who were spying on the southern desolate Duke's side courtyard had already disappeared. This side courtyard could be said to have been destroyed by Gu Fei and the others. However, this kind of side courtyard was nothing to the southern desolate Duke. It didn't matter if it was destroyed. The most important thing was that the southern desolate Duke's son, Yang Sun, had successfully provoked the confrontation between the young cultivators of the southern desolate Duke and the outstanding successors of the three great Taoist sects. The news that Gu Fei had defeated Hu Zhan had already quietly spread among the major forces of Dragon Emperor City. Of course, the outstanding cultivators of the southern desolate Duke's younger generation were not convinced. Some truly outstanding cultivators would come knocking on his door sooner or later. However, this wasn't something that Gu Fei could predict. Moreover, he didn't feel like caring about these trivial matters. After all, strength was everything. Whoever's fist was harder would be the boss. The southern desolate Duke's cultivators, left under the lead of Gue Ting and the young man in purple, Li Lingfeng and the others, on the other hand, walked towards Gu Fei in high spirits. However, Gu Fei didn't wait for Li Lingfeng and the others to come closer. He took a step forward, and with a swoosh, he left an afterimage on the spot and quickly went far away. Everyone couldn't help but stop and look at each other. This night was destined to be an unusual night. The news that Gu Fei had defeated Hu Zhan of the White Tiger clan must have already been known by many people in the city. Perhaps the cultivation world of the southern desolate Duke would boil because of this. Gu Fei returned to Canvas Lunar Restaurant and entered his residence. After entering, his face immediately became flushed and he spat out a large mouthful of blood. He hurriedly sat cross-legged in the room and slowly operated his mysterious technique, drawing the energy within his body to heal his wounded body. Hu Zhan's Tiger Roar Sonic Kill divine ability caused a great impact on Gu Fei, and in order to thoroughly defeat Hu Zhan, Gu Fei had barely managed to execute the 5-elemental unification seal. Although the seal was powerful, in the end, that power wasn't something that he could control right now. Although the 5-elemental unification seal could only be maintained for a short moment, Gu Fei was still unavoidably injured by his own power. It could be said that although Gu Fei looked unparalleled tonight and completely suppressed Hu Zhan, in reality, he also suffered internal injuries, especially that crazy claw of Hu Zhan's at the end, which directly left 5 bloody marks on his chest and abdomen. The southern desolate Duke was a place of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. It indeed couldn't be underestimated, especially the southern desolate Duke who had proud talent. As time passed, Gu Fei's entire body began to emit waves of precious splendor. His bones made cracking sounds, his muscles trembled, and his flesh squirmed. The power contained within his body was guided out. The powerful life essence was repairing Gu Fei's injured body. The 5 bloody marks on his chest and abdomen were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The wounds were shrinking until they formed scabs, and then the scabs fell off. There weren't any scars left on the wounds. After breaking into the 9 heavenly layers of awakening, Gu Fei's body's recovery ability also became extremely shocking. His muscles, bones, and flesh were incomparably strong, and contained a huge amount of life essence. His powerful body was difficult to be injured. It was strong enough to shake ordinary magic treasures. Even if he was injured, he could quickly recover. If his bones were broken, new bones could quickly grow out. If his flesh and blood were injured, the injured flesh and blood could also heal. It could be said that Gu Fei's life force was much stronger than ordinary cultivators. The huge amount of life essence caused Gu Fei to be like the 9 lives divine cat. His life force was extremely tenacious. For ordinary cultivators, fatal injuries could no longer pose a fatal threat to Gu Fei. This was the advantage of having a strong physical body. Cultivators cultivated themselves. They cultivated their muscles, bones, and flesh. Others cultivated Tao techniques and magic treasures. But the body of a cultivator was the strongest magic treasure. The martial way was not inferior to cultivation, nor was it inferior to magical powers. It was just that it was difficult to succeed in cultivating. In comparison, magical powers and Tao techniques were easy to learn. Most people in the world knew that it was easy to do. Few people were willing to know that it was easy to do. When the majority of people knew that it was easy to do, the martial way would completely decline. This might be the trend of the times. The decline of the martial way was not unreasonable. However, successful cultivators were terrifying existences in the cultivation world in each era. Their bodies were unparalleled, and their fighting skills could break all kinds of Tao techniques and magical powers. Just like the indestructible body that Gu Fei had seen in the cavern at the bottom of the icy azure pool, a cultivator who had cultivated to a certain level would be able to live forever even after countless years had passed. Gu Fei was cultivating in his room. What he didn't know was that many people had already fixed their eyes on the canvas lunar building. To be exact, they had fixed their eyes on him. However, no one dared to enter the courtyard where Gu Fei stayed, because it was the place where the disciples of Taishan sect stayed in Dragon Emperor City. Some people already knew that a powerhouse of Taishan sect had come to Dragon Emperor City. Nobody wanted to provoke such a powerhouse. The fights between the younger generation were just small fights. Even if a disciple of a clan was killed in a fight, it could only be attributed to his lack of skills. However, the older generation powerhouses couldn't casually deal with the younger generation. This was also the reason why the mysterious person only saved Hu Zhan instead of killing Gu Fei. Chapter 145. Just as Hu Zhan was about to die under Gu Fei's swordlight, a huge hand suddenly appeared in the sky. Then, it grabbed Hu Zhan, who had been completely controlled by his bestial nature, and retreated. Oomph! Gu Fei sneered. Purple lightning flashed across the sky. The purple swordlight actually made a turn in the air and directly attacked the huge hand. Whether it was the practitioners of the younger generation of the southern wilderness, or Li Lingfeng and the other successors of the 3 major Taoist sects, they were all shocked by Gu Fei's action. The transformation of the primordial spirit, thousands of miles away. This was the huge hand of the primordial spirit cultivated by a great cultivator. It was the manifestation of Taoist connotation. Obviously, a great cultivator had made a move. Someone did not want Hu Zhan to die under Gu Fei's swordlight. If it was an ordinary cultivator, he would have stopped a long time ago. However, Gu Fei was extremely daring. Not only did he not stop, but he also manipulated the swordlight and attacked the huge hand that was descending from the sky. It was really crazy. In front of a great cultivator, even a practitioner of the transcending mortality stage was like an ant. With a flip of the palm, he could destroy a large number of them, let alone a practitioner of the awakening self stage. Gu Fei's battle intent was like a rainbow. Under the detection of the qi, the brilliant sword light formed by the essence of the heavenly weapon immediately went against the natural order and attacked. It did not matter whether it was a great cultivator or a small cultivator, whether it could be provoked or not. Roar! In the huge hand, a crazy white tiger was roaring. It was not a real white tiger, but the image of a white tiger formed by the divine marks of the white tiger. However, no matter how hard Hu Zhan struggled, no matter how he tried, and no matter how powerful his magical power was, he could not escape from the control of the huge hand. He was completely suppressed. Interesting. It's a broken weapon soul. I'll take it. These words rang out from the distant sky. Almost at the same time, a mighty energy storm swept out from the large hand, sweeping towards the purple sword light that was coming for him. That person seemed to have noticed the extraordinariness of the purple sword light and actually wanted to use a great amount of magic power to collect the sword light. The energy storm that swept out from the big hand wrapped around the sword light in an instant. The light of the sword light immediately dimmed. At the same time, the expression of Gu Fei, who was on the ground, changed greatly. He could no longer maintain his composure. This was because he could no longer sense the presence of the divine weapon's essence when the vast power from the hand enveloped the resplendent purple sword light. Not only did the primordial spirit hand wrap around Hu Zhan, it even imprisoned the divine armament's essence energy that Gu Fei released. Furthermore, it rose into the sky, and in an instant, it soared into the sky. Preposterous. Gu Fei couldn't help panicking. That essence energy was incomparably important to him. It was his life-saving talisman, and it had already allowed him to escape death several times. After losing the divine armament's essence energy, Gu Fei had lost his greatest reliance. Just when Gu Fei thought that he was going to lose the divine armament's essence energy, a huge flaming hand suddenly appeared. With a vast amount of raging flames, it directly intercepted the huge hand that was wrapped around Hu Zhan and the divine armament's essence energy. Daoist Chaoyang, what do you want? An angry roar came from afar. The rolling sound waves caused the sky and earth to tremble. A great pressure immediately spread out, causing everyone to change their expressions. Is it Grandmaster Chaoyang of Shaoyang Peak? Li Lingfeng, Ziyu, and the other disciples of the Taishian sect couldn't help but feel delighted. Leave behind the things of the Taishian sect. A calm voice drifted from another direction of Dragon Emperor City. Closely after that, the fiery hand directly intercepted the immortal weapon's essence, which was bound by that person's power. Humph! The person who had secretly saved Hu Zhan seemed unwilling, but he also didn't want to fight with Daoist Chaoyang. The huge hand wrapped Hu Zhan and quickly left, disappearing from everyone's sight in the blink of an eye. After the huge hand transformed by the mysterious person's primordial spirit retreated, the flaming hand in the night sky also dimmed and finally disappeared in the void. The two great cultivators didn't show up. Even though they were thousands of miles away from each other, they had already fought for a short time in the sky above Dragon Emperor City. Although everyone was shocked by the great cultivator's magical abilities, they couldn't help but yearn for it. If they had such a cultivation base, a bright purple sword light shot down from the sky, tearing the void and making a sound like tearing silk. The next moment, this sword light immediately entered Gu Fei's body. The divine armament's essence energy that had been smelted into his body reintegrated into Gu Fei's body and traveled through his qi and blood. After a period of refinement, this divine armament's essence energy became purer and purer. In tonight's battle, Gu Fei not only defeated the most outstanding young powerhouse in the southern wilderness, Hu Zhan of the White Tiger clan, but he also learned something about the divine armament's essence energy in his body. The weapon soul is broken. Could it be that the sword hilt passed down by the ancestor of my green spirit peak has an unimaginable origin? It's actually a peerless divine armament that has given birth to a divine armament soul? Gu Fei couldn't help being shocked. The mysterious yin-yang fish jade pendant and the sword hilt passed down by his master all had great origins and unknown secrets. This made Gu Fei faintly uneasy. Just a strand of essence energy from a divine weapon was enough to attract the attention of a grand cultivator. If others knew that he had the yin-yang fish jade pendant that could increase his cultivation speed by 10 times, those grand cultivators would definitely make a move on him. I'd better keep a low profile in the future, Gu Fei thought. He didn't want to attract other people's attention. At this moment, the figures spying on the southern desolate Duke's side courtyard had already disappeared. This side courtyard could be said to have been destroyed by Gu Fei and the others. However, this kind of side courtyard was nothing to the southern desolate Duke. It didn't matter if it was destroyed. The most important thing was that the Duke's son, Yang Sun, had successfully provoked the confrontation between the young cultivators of the southern desolate Duke and the outstanding descendants of the three great Daoist sects. The news of Gu Fei defeating Hu Zhan had already quietly spread among the major forces of Dragon Emperor City. Of course, the outstanding cultivators of the southern desolate Duke's younger generation were not convinced. Sooner or later, some truly outstanding cultivators would come to find them. However, this wasn't something that Gu Fei could predict. Furthermore, He didn't want to care about these trivial matters. After all, strength was everything. Whoever's fist was harder, that person was the boss. Under the lead of Gue Ting and the purple-haired young man, the southern desolate Duke's cultivators left in a very bad mood. Li Lingfeng and the others, on the other hand, walked towards Gu Fei in high spirits. However, before Li Lingfeng and the others could approach him, Gu Fei took a step forward. With a whoosh, he left an afterimage on the spot and quickly went far away. Everyone couldn't help but stop and look at each other. This night was destined to be an unusual night. The news of Gu Fei defeating Hu Zhan of the White Tiger clan must have already been known by many people in the city. Perhaps the cultivation world of the southern desolate Duke would be seething because of this. Gu Fei returned to the Canvas Lunar restaurant and entered his residence. After entering, his face immediately flushed red and he spat out a large mouthful of blood. He hurriedly sat cross-legged in the room and slowly operated his mysterious technique, drawing out the power in his body to heal his injured body. Hu Zhan's Tiger Roar Sonic Kill Divine ability caused Gu Fei to suffer a great impact. And in order to thoroughly defeat Hu Zhan, Gu Fei forcefully used the 5 elements fused seal art. Although the seal art's power was strong, in the end, that power wasn't something that he could control at the moment. However, that power was not something he could control at the moment. Although the 5 elemental seal could only be maintained for a short moment, Gu Fei still could not avoid being injured by his own power. It could be said that Gu Fei looked unparalleled tonight and completely suppressed Hu Zhan, but in reality, he also suffered internal injuries, especially that crazy claw of Hu Zhan's at the end, which directly left 5 bloody marks on his chest and abdomen. The southern desolate dukes, crouching tigers, and hidden dragons indeed couldn't be underestimated, especially the southern desolate barbarians who had proud talent. As time passed, Gu Fei's entire body began to emit waves of precious splendor. His bones made kacha sounds, his tendons and bones trembled, his flesh wriggled, and the power contained within his body was guided out. The powerful life essence was healing Gu Fei's injured body. The 5 bloody marks on his chest and abdomen were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The wounds were shrinking until they formed scabs, and then the scabs fell off, leaving no scars behind. After breaking into the 9 heavenly layers awakening, Gu Fei's body's recovery ability also became extremely shocking. His tendons, bones, and flesh were incomparably strong, and they also contained a huge amount of life essence. A strong body was hard to be injured, and it was enough to shake ordinary magic treasures. Even if he was injured, he could recover very quickly. If his bones were broken, new bones could quickly grow out from the broken parts. If his flesh was injured, the injured parts could also heal. It could be said that Gu Fei's life force was much stronger than an ordinary cultivator's. The huge amount of life essence made Gu Fei like the divine cat of 9 lives. His life force was extremely tenacious. For an ordinary cultivator, a wound that was enough to be fatal could no longer pose a fatal threat to Gu Fei. This was the advantage of having a powerful mortal body. A martial artist cultivated their body, their tendons, bones, and flesh. Others cultivated Dao techniques and magic treasures, but a martial artist's body was the most powerful magic treasure. Martial arts were not inferior to true cultivation, nor were they inferior to supernatural powers. It was just that it was difficult to cultivate. In contrast, magical powers and Dao techniques were easy to learn. Most people in the world knew that it was easy to do, but not many people were willing to know that it was easy to do. When the majority of people knew that it was easy to do, then the martial arts path would completely decline. Perhaps this was the trend of the times. The decline of the martial arts path was not without reason. However, martial artists who cultivated successfully, in every era, were terrifying existences in the world of cultivation. Their mortal bodies were incomparably powerful, and their martial arts and battle skills could break through thousands of Dao techniques and thousands of supernatural powers. Just like the immortal body that Gu Fei saw in the cave at the bottom of the icy green pool, martial artists who cultivated successfully, even if they died countless years ago, their mortal bodies would still be immortal and exist forever in the world. As Gu Fei was cultivating in his room, He didn't know that many people had already fixed their eyes on the canvas lunar building. To be exact, they had fixed their eyes on him. However, nobody dared to enter the courtyard where Gu Fei stayed, because it was the place where the disciples of Taishian's sect stayed in Dragon Emperor City. Some people already knew that a master of Taishian's sect had come to Dragon Emperor City. Nobody wanted to provoke such a master. The fights between the younger generation were just small fights. Even if some disciples were killed in the fights, it could only be attributed to their lack of skills. However, the masters of the older generation couldn't casually deal with the younger generation. This was also the reason why the mysterious man only saved Hu Zhan instead of killing Gu Fei. Chapter 146. It was a young man with a very cold and arrogant expression. He stood quietly in front of the pavilion where Gu Fei was, and his slender body exuded an extremely strong sense of oppression. His appearance could not be considered very handsome, but he had a unique temperament that was unforgettable after a glance. He was like a proud king. Even if he stood casually in a large group of people, he would still be able to show his outstanding side. It was not far from daybreak, and the surroundings were completely silent. Only the occasional rustling of trees could be heard. Fighting is not allowed in the Canvassing Moon Pavilion. Don't you know the rules here? Gu Fei had a very strange feeling when the old man glanced at him with his lifeless eyes. That pair of lifeless eyes seemed to be able to see into the depths of his heart, making him shudder with fear. This old man was definitely not simple. These are your rules, not mine, Azure Dragon said. The meaning behind his words was very clear. I don't necessarily have to abide by your rules. However, this is the Canvassing Moon Pavilion, not the territory of your Azure Dragon clan, the old man said indifferently, revealing Azure Dragon's background. The Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, and Black Tortoise were the four great sacred clans of the southern wilderness that had been passed down since ancient times. It was said that their ancestors were the four great sacred beasts of ancient times. This Azure Dragon was the #1 person among the younger generation of the Azure Dragon clan. Azure Dragon was not so much a name, but rather a title that only the #1 person among the younger generation of the clan could have. At this moment, the people in the nearby courtyards had also noticed the abnormality here. They all came out of their pavilions and cast their gazes over. Azure Dragon took a deep look at the old man, and then said to Gu Fei, "I will come to find you again." Then, Azure Dragon turned around and left. Azure Dragon clan. Gu Fei looked at Azure Dragon's departing figure and narrowed his eyes. Rays of light shot out from his eyes. This Azure Dragon was a good opponent. Although Gu Fei also wanted to fight with an expert like Azure Dragon, it had to be after the trip to the Ruined Sky Realm. He wanted to enter the Ruined Heaven Realm in peak condition. The Ruined Heaven Realm was a paradise, but it was also a place of great danger. Gu Fei did not want to die in the Ruined Heaven Realm. Gu Fei turned around, walked into the room, closed the door, and then sat cross-legged on the bed. He did not feel the slightest bit sleepy. After circulating his energy to heal his injuries, the injuries he suffered during the battle with Hu Zhan were no longer serious. At this time, he suddenly remembered the Shaoqing snake in the magic treasure pouch. He wondered if the little guy had already refined the beast crystal in its stomach. Opening the artifact pouch, Zhang Xian took a look inside. He was shocked to find that the beast crystals were nowhere to be seen. Even the Blackwater mystical serpent's Niden was gone. The Shaoqing snake seemed to have expanded a little. It was already a foot long, and the two bumps on its head seemed to have become more obvious. The Shaoqing snake was lazily coiled in the artifact pouch, and there was a round bulge on its abdomen. This, Gu Fei was extremely shocked. The Shaoqing snake had really shocked him. It had even swallowed the Blackwater mystical serpent's Niden. This little thing can really eat. Gu Fei was speechless. The Blackwater mystical serpent's Niden was different from those beast crystals. It contained a huge amount of energy that belonged to the Blackwater mystical serpent. It seemed that it would not be easy to refine the Niden. The Shaoqing snake was coiled in the artifact pouch, and its body was covered in a layer of cyan light that kept flowing. Gu Fei keenly noticed that the Shaoqing snake seemed to have entered a strange state. It seemed to have entered a state of half-hibernation, As Gufei didn't want to disturb the Shaoqing snake, he fastened the opening of the artifact pouch and tied it to his waist. After that, he closed his eyes and started to meditate to nourish his true qi. When the dawn was about to break, 3 people arrived at a hidden valley 50 miles away from Dragon Emperor City. The first one was an old Taoist in a robe embroidered with 9 golden crows. The 9 golden crows on the old Taoist's robe were so vivid that they looked like 9 bright suns, giving out heat. The other 2 people were Ding Yangzi of Shangqing sect and Lu Ruhai of Guangqing Immortal sect. Chapter 147. The huge altar was 30 feet high and 50 feet wide. It was built entirely from a huge blue stone. Apart from the countless runes carved in the center of the altar, it seemed that every blue stone that made up the altar had runes flashing on it, and a brilliance flowing on each and every blue stone. The 4 altars were emitting a pure and holy aura. Every single blue stone seemed to contain an inexplicable and obscure power, which seemed to be brewing. It was the righteous qi of the universe. The large formation on the sacrificial altar constantly converged the surrounding spiritual qi of the universe, making the sacrificial altar more extraordinary. There was a white jade staircase in front of the sacrificial altar. At this moment, Lu Ruhai of Guangqing Immortal sect and Ding Yangzi of Shangqing sect were accompanying an old Taoist in a golden crow robe and a purple gold star crown up the stairs. The old Taoist gave out a transcendent qi like an old immortal descending from the heavens. His movements didn't carry any mortal qi at all. This old Taoist was Taoist Chaoyang, the founder of Shaoyang Peak of Taishan sect. When Taoist Chaoyang fought Demon Monarch of 6 realms in Yuming Mountain, nobody knew the final outcome of the battle. However, since Taoist Chaoyang fought Demon Monarch of 6 realms in Dragon Emperor City last night and appeared here with Lu Ruhai and Ding Yangzi, it indicated that he wasn't severely wounded in the battle. After stepping onto the sacrificial altar, Taoist Chaoyang looked around and nodded satisfactorily. Then, he waved his sleeves and told Ding Yangzi, who was standing respectfully on his side, "Let's start." "Yes, sir." Ding Yangzi hurriedly took a step forward and slapped the magic treasure pouch on his waist. Whoosh! Whoosh! Dozens of small purple flags flew out of the 100 treasures pouch one after another. Each flag was less than 30 centimeters long and less than 4 fingers wide. They were covered with dense runes, as if they were covered with a layer of flowing purple light. Meanwhile, these small flags emitted a vast magical power wave. The purple flags floated above the altar. There were a total of 49 flags, and they were 7 by 7. As Cauldron Yangzi made a series of hand seals, the 49 small flags began to emit a hazy purple radiance. The talismans on the flags seemed to have come to life and were about to rush out from the surface of the flags. The 49 small flags formed a mysterious formation in the air. The purple light emitted by the 49 small flags merged into one, covering the sky above the altar. For a time, the sun and moon in this hidden valley lost their light, and the world lost its color. However, all the strange fluctuations were blocked by an unfathomable power that enveloped the entire valley. Not a single trace of it could be transmitted out. Clearly, Taoist Chaoyang and the others were prepared and sealed off the entire valley to prevent anyone from sensing anything unusual here. After all, there were crouching tigers and hidden dragons in the southern wilderness. If one didn't make preparations beforehand, then the unusual fluctuation of the essence of heaven and earth would absolutely be unable to escape the senses of those great cultivators. Lu Ruhai, a sword expert of the broad accomplishment Immortal sect, couldn't help but be moved by Ding Yangzi's marvelous formation. Only Taoist Chaoyang remained unperturbed. "Go!" Cauldron Yangzi shouted and formed a seal with his hand. Then, he pressed it against the formation flags above him. A stream of pure mana surged out of the seal and entered the purple mist. At the same time, the 49 array flags that were shrouded in purple gas, after absorbing this spiritual power, seemed to be completely aroused the power of the array flags. In an instant, each array flag grew to 100 feet in size, then turned into 49 rays of purple light that blasted in all directions, submerging into the mountains around the valley. In the blink of an eye, the purple mist disappeared from the sky, and there was no longer any fluctuation of mana. The world was clear and bright. The rising sun in the east shone its rays onto the sacrificial altar. This is the Shangqing sect's 8 gates reversal, shape-shifting illusions formation. With this formation sealing off the valley, I believe that even the big shots of the southern wilderness will not be able to detect anything unusual in the valley, Cauldron Yangzi confidently said to Taoist Chaoyang. Yes, very good. Taoist Chaoyang nodded as he walked straight to the center of the large formation above the sacrificial altar and sat down with crossed legs. You can go now. As long as I'm here, nobody could destroy the sacrificial altar unless a semi-deity level unparalleled figure takes action, Taoist Chaoyang said calmly. Yes, sir. Lu Ruhai and Cauldron Yangzi bowed towards Taoist Chaoyang before turning around and leaving. Wait, Taoist Chaoyang suddenly stopped them. In a few days, Taoist Lishang should send a message to us. When you go back, you should restrain your disciples. Don't make any trouble in Dragon Emperor City anymore. If those old B***stards of the southern wilderness come out, it would be very troublesome. After hearing Taoist Chaoyang's words, Lu Ruhai and Cauldron Yangzi exchanged a glance with each other before agreeing in unison. After that, they moved back a few steps before turning around and leaving. The two of them walked out of the valley and looked back. They saw that the valley was lush and green. Waterfalls and fountains dotted the valley. It was a scene of prosperity. What altar, what formation, and what human figure could there be? Taoist brother Cauldron Yangzi, your Shangqing sect's knowledge of formations is really marvelous. When Lu Ruhai saw this, he could not help but sigh in admiration. This formation that reversed the 8 gates and shifting shadows actually concealed everything in the valley. No one could tell that what they saw was an illusion. I'm flattered, Cauldron Yangzi said with a smile. After talking for a short while, the two people left the valley for Dragon Emperor City together. Gu Fei was taking a rest with his eyes closed in his room on the top floor of the pavilion while an extremely obscure vital chi wave was surging over his body, which was the power of the source of life. On the path of cultivation, all the power originated from the body. The body was a huge treasure. The more profound one's cultivation base was, the greater the power would be. After last night's battle, Zhang Tai's 9th heavenly layer's power had been much purer. He could control the new power more skillfully. However, Gu Fei felt that the new energy that he had guided out from breaking through the bottleneck of his cultivation was not completely compatible with his body. There was a process for the new energy to be compatible with his body, and this was something that no one could avoid. Gu Fei's body was undergoing subtle changes to adapt to the new power. The power in his flesh, blood, tendons, and bones was gradually increasing. Gu Fei's body was advancing towards a treasure body. When the power in his flesh reached the bottleneck, it would be the day he would break through to the transcending mortality realm. It could be said that Gu Fei's power was not in his dantian, but in his body. Although there was a ball of natal essence in his dantian, it was not the center of his power. The function of natal essence was to transform the vitality of the world and communicate with the internal and external heavens and earth. The internal heavens and earth were the heavens and earth inside one's body, while the external heavens and earth were the natural heavens and earth outside. The path of cultivation focused on cultivating one's body, but comprehending the heavens and earth was also indispensable. Powerful power required a corresponding state of mind to control and manipulate. Gu Fei was in a semi-conscious state. His whole body was relaxed, and his thoughts wandered above the 9 heavens, wandering between the heavens and earth. He seemed to have become a bystander, indifferently feeling the pulse of the new power in his body. His flesh, blood, tendons, and bones trembled slightly, absorbing the power bit by bit. No sadness, no joy. This was Gu Fei's current state of mind. Watching the flowers bloom and wither in front of the courtyard. There was no intention to stay or go. Watching the clouds in the sky, unmoved by favor or disgrace. After an unknown period of time, there was a sudden sound of light footsteps outside the pavilion. Then, very quickly, that person walked into the pavilion and came to Gu Fei's door. Gu Fei naturally woke up from that mysterious state. Distinguished guest, this servant has prepared lunch for you. May I ask if you would like to eat now? Then, a gentle voice came from outside the door. Come in. He stood up from the bed, turned around the screen in the bedroom, and walked to the front hall. At this time, the girl outside the door also pushed open the door and walked in. In her hands, there was a purple tray. On the tray, there were a few dishes and a pot of wine. Gu Fei glanced at this girl. He saw that this girl was not old and should be called a young girl. The young girl was wearing an emerald green dress. Her appearance was charming, and her skin was delicate and white. She was a beautiful girl. Of course, this young girl's appearance, compared to Zhao Ziru and Ling Luoyan, was much inferior. At least, this young girl in front of him did not have Zhao Ziru's otherworldly temperament, nor did she have Ling Luoyan's noble aura. Gu Fei sensed the movements in the surroundings. He discovered that on the other pavilions in the courtyard, there were also figures of emerald green girls holding trays. The young girl placed the trays on the table and then carefully placed the wine and dishes in front of Gu Fei. Gu Fei felt that the trays used to hold the wine and dishes seemed to be made of a whole piece of purple jade. He couldn't help but be a little surprised. It seemed that this canvas lunar pavilion was not simple. Purple jade, even in the world of cultivation, was a rare material. The jade talismans that cultivators wore on their bodies were refined from purple jade. But the people of the canvas lunar pavilion actually used purple jade trays to hold the wine and dishes. This made Gu Fei feel that it was a waste of a heavenly treasure. Customer, please enjoy. The young girl bowed to Gu Fei and then left. Junior brother Gu, are you going out? At the entrance of the canvas lunar pavilion, Gu Fei was stopped by a person. There seemed to be only two people in the sect who could call him junior brother. The one who called out to Gu Fei was one of them. Oh, it's you. What's the matter? Gu Fei asked calmly after taking a look at that person. It was a young man in white who didn't look outstanding. This young man in white was the eldest senior brother of the younger generation of the Taishan sect, Li Lingfeng. I also want to go out for a walk. Let's go together. Li Lingfeng was very friendly. Although he didn't have a deep relationship with Gu Fei, he had always been very warm to Gu Fei. Those who didn't know might think that they had been close friends for many years. Gu Fei took a deep look at Li Lingfeng. After quite a while, he nodded. The streets of Dragon Emperor City were very spacious and prosperous. There were many shops and restaurants on both sides of the street, and people came and went. Moreover, from time to time, one could see people from other regions whose skin color and hair were different from those of the Central Plains. As Gu Fei and Li Lingfeng walked on the street, Gu Fei found that some of the shops on the street were actually selling items from the world of cultivation. There were magic treasures of cultivators, Taoist talismans, jade talismans, various kinds of immortal weapons that had been refined by Taoist methods. There were also old ginseng, glossy ganoderma, black, and other spiritual medicines. Gu Fei was not interested in these things at all. He was not a cultivator, so he didn't need magic treasures and Taoist talismans. As for those so-called immortal weapons that had been refined by Taoist methods, he didn't care about them at all. As for ginseng and glossy ganoderma, he didn't care about them at all. The oldest ginseng was only over 300 years old, which couldn't arouse Gu Fei's interest at all. Gu Fei and Li Lingfeng chatted as they walked through the crowd. All of a sudden, a man in cyan came from the front and stopped them. Excuse me, is that Gu Fei? My master wants to see you. The man in cyan bowed towards the two people. However, he directly called Gu Fei's name in an arrogant manner. After exchanging a glance with each other, Gu Fei and Li Lingfeng both felt a bit confused. As they were just passers-by in Dragon Emperor City, they didn't know anyone. Who would know about their existence? I'm Gu Fei. Who's your master? Gu Fei couldn't be bothered to say anything to this fellow. His eyes shot out two rays of light that were as sharp as blades, shining on the man's face. At the same time, a great pressure was emitted from Gu Fei's body. The azure-clothed man felt his eyes light up as Gu Fei's eyes suddenly became dazzling and resplendent like the stars in the sky, and he couldn't help but be shocked. He hurriedly lowered his head and didn't dare look directly at Gu Fei. At the same time, the man in cyan sensed the mountain-like pressure from Gu Fei, which filled him with fear. He felt as small as an ant in front of Gu Fei. There were some dog slaves who, when treated nicely, would become extremely arrogant and look down on everyone. Their tails were practically about to reach the heavens. However, If they were to be slapped twice, causing them to lose their bearings, they would obediently scram to the side. This man in cyan was the one who deserved to be slapped. However, the master behind this guy should have a great background. Otherwise, this guy would not dare assume the majesty of a tiger. Please follow me. My master is in Drunken Immortal's residence in front of us. Under the fierce pressure of Gu Fei, the man in cyan's voice quivered. At the same time, he hurriedly lowered his head and led the way. Let's take a look. Gu Fei didn't think too much about it. No matter what, he couldn't guess who the master of this man in cyan was. If he wanted to know who that master was, the most direct way was to meet that master. At the sight of this, Li Lingfeng couldn't help but frown as he recalled Dan Xinzi's words in the morning. Dan Xinzi told him to restrain his fellow disciples. However, he couldn't restrain Gu Fei. Chapter 148. Drunken Immortal Residence was a boit, which was a bit famous in Dragon Emperor City because of the two words, Drunken Immortal. It was said that even immortals and deities would be drunk after drinking the fine liquor of Drunken Immortal Residence. In Drunken Immortal Residence, even the lowest liquor was century-old. If you could afford it, you could even taste the top-level Xinshan liquor, which was over 500 years old, which could increase your cultivation base, or the vermilion fruit liquor, which was brewed with 1,000 years old vermilion fruit. The green-robed man brought Gu Fei to the entrance of the Drunken Immortal Residence. Gu Fei seemed to have sensed something and immediately stopped. His expression was a little ugly. He raised his head and looked at the restaurant located in the middle of the bustling city. The three golden words, Drunken Immortal Tavern, were written on the banner, which shone with a dazzling golden light under the afternoon sun. It was somewhat dazzling. I was wondering who it was. It's them, Gu Fei murmured. He sensed a few familiar auras. He smiled and strode into the Drunken Immortal Residence without any scruples. At this time, the azure-clothed man had long since abandoned Gu Fei and ran off to God knows where, while Li Lingfeng had already arrived at the entrance of the Drunken Immortal Residence. These people. Li Lingfeng's expression immediately turned grave when he sensed the auras coming from inside. Please don't let anything happen to them. Li Lingfeng hurriedly entered Drunken Immortal Residence. There wasn't a single soul in sight. That's right. This Drunken Immortal abode that was situated in the middle of the bustling city had a huge lobby on the first floor, yet not a single customer could be seen. Only a fair-skinned middle-aged man who looked like a manager was standing behind the counter in a flurried way as he looked at the staircase leading to the second floor from time to time. Today, some big figures had booked the entire Drunken Immortal Residence. As the manager of this boit, he should be happy to meet such extravagant guests. However, the manager of Drunken Immortal Residence didn't feel happy at all. He even preferred that these people didn't come here and didn't do business with these extravagant guests, because these people had prominent backgrounds and identities in South Wilderness. If these extravagant guests were unhappy, they could easily raise Drunken Immortal Residence to the ground. In the eyes of these people, the Drunken Immortal Residence was merely an ordinary restaurant. Li Lingfeng walked into the lobby on the first floor. His gaze, which was as sharp as a blade and as sharp as an arrow, swept across the lobby before he immediately walked toward the staircase leading to the second floor. When Li Lingfeng reached the second floor, she happened to see Gu Fei walking into a private room. Online ETN. Those familiar auras came from that private room. After Gu Fei went in, Li Lingfeng clearly felt that the auras of those people began to increase rapidly. The private room was filled with a threatening aura, as if a barrel of gunpowder had been ignited. Swoosh! Li Lingfeng disappeared from where he was, crossing a distance of 7 or 8 feet in an instant, appearing outside the door of the private room. Then, he pushed the door open and entered. When he saw the people in the private room, Li Lingfeng couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He groaned inwardly. So it really was them. Hee. I didn't think that the eldest senior of the Taishan sect would also come. Please, sit. A tall and sturdy young man in white said with a laugh. Hu Zhan. Seeing this young man in white, Li Lingfeng's pupils couldn't help but contract. He couldn't help but reveal a hint of battle intent. Li Lingfeng had been defeated very miserably in the battle with Hu Zhan last night. The scene at that time had long been deeply imprinted in his heart. He would probably remember it clearly for the rest of his life. If Danshinzi hadn't given Li Lingfeng, Ren Wuming, and Lin Xian, the three of them had used the effects of the origin cultivating pills to recover from their injuries overnight, they would probably still be recuperating. Origin cultivating pills could strengthen one's foundation. For Li Lingfeng and the others whose yuan qi had been damaged, it was no different from a miracle pill. After spitting out a few mouthfuls of congested blood, their injuries would be completely healed. Li Lingfeng's face was cold as he sat next to Gu Fei. Azure Dragon, why did you invite me here? If you want to fight me, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed, Gu Fei said as he stared at the young man in black opposite him. In the private room, besides Hu Zhan, there was also the mysterious young man in purple and Gue Tong, a young powerhouse of the Black Tortoise clan. It was impossible for the older generation to deal with Gu Fei and the others. Only the young powerhouses of the Southern Wilderness Barbarian clan would be unconvinced and want to get back at them for what they had done last night. Azure Dragon smiled and said, I know your purpose for coming to Dragon Emperor City. If I'm not mistaken, you're going to leave Dragon Emperor City in a few days. How did you know that? Gu Fei didn't think much of it, but Li Lingfeng couldn't help but be startled by Azure Dragon's words. How shuck, could it be that he knows our secret? Humph, where is this? This is Dragon Emperor City, the Southern Wilderness. There's nothing that we Southern Wilderness barbarian clans don't know. Furthermore, this has happened more than once, Azure Dragon said coldly. Hearing this, Gu Fei couldn't help but frown. The Southern Wilderness barbarian clan was not simple. They even knew such a secret. However, why didn't they intervene? Could it be that they were afraid of the three great Taoist sects? Since you understand, that's for the best. Goodbye. Gu Fei didn't want to say more and directly stood up. I want to challenge you. Azure Dragon also stood up and stared at Gu Fei's face with his bright eyes. An incomparably powerful battle intent surged out of Azure Dragon's body without any scruples. In an instant, Gu Fei felt a faintly discernible momentum. It had already locked onto him. This force was extremely powerful. This momentum originated from Azure Dragon. The atmosphere in the private room instantly became tense. A tense atmosphere filled every corner and every inch of space in the private room. Hu Zhan, Gue Tong, and the purple-haired youth abruptly stood up. Each of them was emitting a powerful energy wave. They stared at Gu Fei as if they were going to launch an attack at any time. Especially Hu Zhan, his muscles bulged all over. The muscles on his arms were knotted, and he gave off an extremely powerful oppressive feeling. If it was in normal times, I would be more than willing to fight you. However, now is not the right time. Gu Fei ignored the provocation of Azure Dragon and the others. Haha, good. Azure Dragon suddenly burst into laughter as he withdrew all of his momentum. The tense atmosphere in the private room was immediately dissolved by his laughter. I know you will return to Dragon Emperor City in 1 month. The battle between you and me will take place in 1 month, Azure Dragon said. It seemed that he really knew something. This was a top secret even in the three great Taoist sects. Even Azure Dragon and the others could know about it. The strength of the Southern Wilderness Barbarian tribe could not be underestimated. If I can come back, even if you don't come for me, I will come for you. Gu Fei calmly glanced over the faces of Azure Dragon and the others. Then, he turned around and walked out of the private room. Li Lingfeng also followed behind Gu Fei and left this place that made him feel depressed. Boss Azure Dragon, why did you let them go like this? Seeing Gu Fei's figure disappear at the top of the stairs, Hu Zhan said unhappily. This Gu Fei had almost killed him. Fortunately, the old ancestor of the tribe made a move in time and saved Hu Zhan from Gu Fei's swordlight, allowing Hu Zhan to escape from Gu Fei's swordlight. Of course, Hu Zhan didn't like Gu Fei. It's not the right time to make a move now. Azure Dragon sighed and sat down again. He picked up the flagon and poured himself a cup of wine. Then, he drank it up. The current Dragon Emperor City was full of hidden forces. The situation was very complicated. If one was not careful, it might lead to a war between the major forces. As the #1 person in the younger generation of the Azure Dragon clan, Azure Dragon had some scruples. After leaving the drunken immortal residence, Gu Fei had long lost interest in shopping. Then, he wanted to return to the canvassing moon pavilion. However, when he passed by a shop that sold various kinds of beast crystals, he couldn't help but stop when he saw the various kinds of beast crystals. Junior brother Guyu, Li Lingfeng, who had just felt relieved, became anxious again. Actually, the reason why Li Lingfeng accompanied Gu Fei out was to keep an eye on him. Gu Fei ignored Li Lingfeng and directly entered the shop. Hee, little brother, which kind of beast crystal do you want? We have a complete variety of beast crystals here, and the quality is even better. At the sight of Gu Fei, a tall and thin man hurriedly greeted him with a smile. Flaming Eagle's crystal core, 300 gold. Great Earth Bear's crystal core, 1,000 gold. Twin-headed Earth Python's crystal core, 10,000 gold. Beast crystals of different sizes, colors, and different spiritual source waves were displayed on the crystal counter in the shop. Gu Fei suddenly remembered that he didn't seem to have any money on him. Gu Fei couldn't help smiling bitterly. Then, he wanted to turn around and leave. Little brother, wait a moment, I have better beast crystals here. At the sight of Gu Fei leaving, the tall and thin man immediately went forward to stop Gu Fei. Gu Fei couldn't help but stare. His eyes shone brightly, causing the tall and thin man to jump and unconsciously take a step back. Young master, don't be angry. Young master, don't be angry. I really have better beast crystals. They are left behind by a terrifying beast that failed to transform into a demon. The tall and thin man hurriedly took out a brocade box from his body and opened it. A dark green brilliance suddenly shot out from the brocade box. Gu Fei immediately felt a strong spiritual source wave. It seemed that the intensity of the spiritual source wave was not inferior to the wave emitted from the crystal core of the giant ape that he had killed before. The tall and thin man closed the brocade box. The dark green brilliance that shot out from the box immediately disappeared. At the same time, the brocade box also isolated the spiritual source wave. Just as Gu Fei was about to leave, 3 people suddenly walked in from outside the shop. Boss Bai, you didn't even inform me that you had good stuff. The first person was a short and fat young man dressed in a purple brocade robe. He held a birdcage in his hand and wore a crooked golden crown on his head. In the birdcage, there was a fist-sized bird with a red head and a green body. It was constantly fluttering in the birdcage. He was a complete spoiled brat. The 2 people following behind the short and fat young man, from their attire, should be the young man's attendants. Give it to me. After the short and fat young man holding the birdcage came in, he immediately extended a chubby and fleshy palm in front of the tall and thin man. This young master Zhongli, this young master has already taken a liking to this beast crystal. You see, Boss Bai said with a troubled expression. Obviously, this Boss Bai did not want to sell the beast crystal to this young master Zhongli. Although this beast crystal is good, I did not say that I want to buy it. Gu Fei was about to speak, but in the next moment, he was choked by young master Zhongli's tone. Humph! What the F***CK? Young master Zhongli threw a disdainful glance at Gu Fei as he said, Go back to where you came from. Nobody in Dragon Emperor City dares touch what this young master has taken a liking to. Boss, I want that beast crystal. Gu Fei said calmly as he watched young master Zhongli in a ridiculing way. Junior fellow apprentice Gu, it's better to avoid trouble. Li Lingfeng whispered to Gu Fei. Preposterous. How dare you look down on this young master? Remove the limbs of these 2 fellows for this young master. Before Li Lingfeng finished his words, young master Zhongli had already started to clamor with the birdcage. At once, 7 to 8 tough men rushed in from outside the shop. The 2 burly men at the front didn't say anything and raised their fists to greet Gu Fei and Li Lingfeng. 3 tough men even drew out their long swords from their waists with clangs. Chapter 149. What a reckless slave! When Gu Fei raised his hand, the 7 or 8 fierce-looking burly men who had charged into the shop were immediately sent flying back to where they came from. The street was in an uproar at once. Fatty Zhongli, who was holding the birdcage in his hand, pointed at Gu Fei. His face was filled with fear, and his voice was trembling. You what? I'm going to slap you. With a sway of his body, Gu Fei immediately arrived in front of the fat man. His large hand covered the fat man's chubby, fair, and tender face. Pa! Gu Fei's slap made the fatty dizzy. The birdcage in his hand also flew off and hit the wall before exploding. The exotic bird in the cage instantly flapped its wings and flew out of the store. It was impossible to kill someone in Dragon Emperor City, especially in the downtown area. However, it was impossible to let this playboy bully him without fighting back. After being slapped by Gu Fei, the fatty spun around for a few times. After staggering a few steps, he turned around as a big palm print appeared on his fat face. Gu Fei didn't use too much strength. If he wanted to kill this fatty, he only needed to spit out that immortal weapon's essence. You dare slap me? The fatty widely opened his eyes as if he couldn't believe it. He was extremely furious as he pointed at Gu Fei and said in a quivering voice, "You dare slap me? Do you know who I am? How dare you slap me? Who the hell are you?" Gu Fei said disdainfully as he raised his right hand again. Pa! Another loud slap landed on the fatty's face. The left cheek of the fatty had already swollen. What a slap! Even if he's a relative of the emperor, so what? Damn it! Don't leave if you have the guts. Two resounding slaps in the face made Fatty so ashamed and resentful that his blood vessels were about to burst. He was a direct descendant of the family and was usually high and mighty. When had he ever received such inhuman treatment? With the protection of his clan power, Fatty Zhongli was as aggressive as a crab in Dragon Emperor City. He was always the one who beat others. No one had ever dared to touch him. Of course, a truly formidable person would feel that it was beneath them to bicker with him. Otherwise, this Fatty Zhongli would have died countless times over. However, he really thought that everyone was afraid of him, so he became even more domineering. Seeing that the situation wasn't right, the fat man wanted to slip away. As he spoke harshly, he ran out of the store. Swoosh! Gu Fei disappeared from where he was and appeared in front of Fatty, blocking his path. Fatty Zhongli seemed to be unable to stop his momentum. Just as he was about to collide with Gu Fei, a sinister expression suddenly appeared on his face. A short stick-like object appeared in his hand under his large sleeves. Go to hell! Fatty Zhongli roared as if he had gone mad. His finger abruptly pressed down on a bulge on the short stick. Pung! Fatty Zhongli's sleeves exploded in a split second as fine blue lights shot out of his sleeves towards Gu Fei. Everyone was startled by this sudden scene. Li Lingfeng even cried out inwardly, and the shop owner was even more shocked. Gu Fei and Li Lingfeng didn't know the background of this foppish playboy. However, the boss knew the background of this fatty. Because he knew the background of this fatty, he became more frightened. Despicable bastard! Gu Fei couldn't help but become angry when he saw that the fatty was actually trying to kill him. If he was an ordinary person, wouldn't he have lost his life here today? Gu Fei's hand fell forward and the dozens of blue lights were absorbed into his palm. Then, he clenched his hand and the dozens of oxhair steel needles in his palm were immediately crushed into dust. Then, he opened his palm and the faint blue dust sprinkled down from between Gu Fei's fingers. Fatty Zhongli was stunned by the scene in front of him. He couldn't stop his forward momentum and directly hit Gu Fei's body. Then, he bounced back and rolled on the ground. Damn you! Ever since Dongfang Long and Beitang Ao plotted against Gu Fei with poison wine, he hated these guys who secretly attacked people. He originally wanted to punish this fatty, but he was really angry now. He directly took a step towards the fatty who had fallen on the ground. Junior fellow apprentice Gu, show mercy, don't kill him. Li Lingfeng was paying attention to Gu Fei's look. When he found that Gu Fei really wanted to kill that foppish playboy, Li Lingfeng was startled as he hurriedly stopped him. Li Lingfeng had long realized that this fatty was not an ordinary person. He might be a disciple of a major force in Dragon Emperor City. It was not worthwhile to offend a local force in Dragon Emperor City for this foppish playboy. Young master, please don't kill him for my sake. The tall and skinny shop owner also recovered from the shock at this time. His whole body was suddenly covered in cold sweat, and he hurriedly stepped forward to dissuade them. If this child Zhongli was killed in his own shop, he would have no place to stay in Dragon Emperor City, although being large. This child Zhongli must have a great background. Gu Fei's foot stopped in the air. Although he didn't really step down, his great strength had already pressed the fatty onto the ground, making him unable to move at all. Fatty Zhongli couldn't even speak at this time. He was gasping for breath. He felt as if there was a mountain pressing down on his body. All the bones in his body were cracking, as if they were about to fall apart. It was extremely uncomfortable. Clang, 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 clang. Sounds of weapons being unsheathed drifted from outside the shop. 9 bodyguards rushed in with shiny sabers and swords in their hands. Without any order, they had fiercely slashed towards Gu Fei. Gu Fei slightly pressed forward with his right palm. Bang, bang, bang. The crisp sound of metal breaking resounded as the 8 snow-white swords and sabers that were slashing towards them were all broken. The expressions of the 8 people immediately changed. Seeing that Gu Fei had broken their weapons with just a light press of his palm, they knew that they had kicked an iron plate today. Pa, pa, pa. Gu Fei slightly turned his palm, sending the 9 bodyguards flying away at once. At this moment, exclamations were heard outside the shop. It seemed that many people had gathered outside to watch the fun. Your Excellency, could you please lift your leg and let go of my third brother? At this moment, a melodious voice drifted in from outside the shop. Closely after that, the light outside the shop dimmed as a peerless beauty walked in. The moment this woman appeared, the light she emitted caused even the light emitted by the beast crystals to dim. Her peerless beauty caused everyone's eyes to light up. There was a peerless beauty in South Wilderness. Her one smile could topple a city. Another smile could topple a country. This was an incomparably dazzling beauty. No one could describe her beauty because all the words of praise seemed incomparably pale in front of her. And who are you? Gu Fei retracted his right leg and calmly looked at the peerless beauty. It was undeniable that the woman in front of him had indeed stunned Gu Fei. Of course, this did not mean that this woman was much more beautiful than Zhao Ziru and Ling Luoyan. It could only be said that this woman had a unique temperament that Zhao Ziru and Ling Luoyan did not have. I am Zhongli Ming. May I know how to address you, young master? Zhongli Ming's tone was neither servile nor overbearing. The temperament she displayed was many times stronger than that fatty Zhongli. As for that fatty Zhongli Ming, after Gu Fei retracted his leg, he hurriedly crawled up from the ground and hid behind Zhongli Ming. Sister, quickly help me capture this damned fellow. I want him to suffer a fate worse than death. Zhongli Ming stared at Gu Fei and said fiercely while gnashing his teeth. Huh. Gu Fei glanced at the fatty Zhongli Ming, his eyes flashing with an ominous glint. Zhongli Ming immediately became subdued. He had been beaten by Gu Fei and was afraid. Although his words were fierce, he hid behind his sister and did not dare to face Gu Fei. Supreme Mystery Sect's Gu Fei. Gu Fei could not be bothered with the fatty Zhongli Ming anymore. He looked at the fairy-like Zhongli Ming and said coldly, for Gu Fei, who was obsessed with martial arts, a peerless beauty was nothing more than a skeleton. It was difficult for her to move his heart. He believed that strength determined everything. Gu Fei? You are Gu Fei. Zhongli Ming was obviously shocked. The name Gu Fei was not unfamiliar to her. The news that the White Tiger clan's Hu Zhan had been defeated by Gu Fei had already spread far and wide. What, have you heard of me? Gu Fei said with some surprise. He did not know that his name had already spread among the major forces of the southern wilderness. Haha, of course I know you. I also know that Hu Zhan of the White Tiger clan was defeated by you. He is known as the most outstanding descendant of the White Tiger clan, but he was actually defeated. This matter is enough to shake the entire southern wilderness and cause an uproar among the younger generation. Zhongli Ming said with a smile. Oh. Gu Fei did not deny it. This is. Zhongli Ming's gaze shifted to Li Lingfeng. Supreme Mystery Sect's Li Lingfeng. Li Lingfeng stepped forward and said, cultivators were naturally indifferent. Although Zhongli Ming had a peerless beauty, in front of Li Lingfeng, she was nothing more than a beautiful body. Zhongli Ming could already tell from the eyes of both Gu Fei and Li Lingfeng that her beauty had no power in front of these two. Ah, so it is Supreme Mystery Sect's eldest senior brother. I have been disrespectful. Zhongli Ming nodded to Li Lingfeng. At this time, everyone seemed to have forgotten the existence of the fat Zhongli, which made the fat Zhongli Ming very depressed. "Why are you still not leaving?" Zhongli Ming suddenly said to the fat Zhongli Ming in a low voice, then turned to Gu Fei and said, "My third brother has always been impulsive. If he has offended you in any way, for my sake, how about we write it off?" The fat Zhongli Ming did not know what to do. He hurriedly walked out of the shop and left under the protection of the guards. "Humph." Gu Fei snorted coldly and did not say anything more. Li Lingfeng could not wait to make a big deal out of a small matter, and Boss Bai of the shop naturally had no objections. However, a conflict had arrived, and in a few words, it had turned into smoke. Chapter 150. Gu Fei didn't refuse Zhongli Ming's invitation. Instead, he left the store. Under the guidance of Zhongli Ming, Gu Fei and Li Lingfeng entered a palace in Dragon Emperor City. Zhongli clan played an important role in Dragon Emperor City. As one of the major forces in South Wilderness, it was not strange for them to have a complex of palaces in Dragon Emperor City. Of course, when Gu Fei left the shop that sold beast crystals, he exchanged the beast crystal left behind by the ferocious beast that failed to attain rebirth and become a demon with a Dao art talisman. Seeing Gu Fei exchanging a high-level talisman for a beast crystal, Li Lingfeng couldn't help but feel pained. As for the shop owner, he was extremely happy, because the value of the Dao talisman with Dao energy sealed within it was much higher than that beast crystal. Ferocious beast crystal nuclei were plentiful in the southern wasteland. As for Taoist talismans, even in the world of cultivation, they were rare and priceless items. The talisman that Gu Fei exchanged for the beast crystal was the one that he got from Wang Yuanji, a disciple of Great Void Peak. Wang Yuanji had never imagined that his life-saving talisman could be exchanged by Gu Fei for beast crystals. The reason why Gu Fei suddenly wanted to buy beast crystals was because of the bizarre Shaoqing snake which had taken his magic equipment pouch as its nest. The green snake could devour and refine the spiritual source in beast crystals. Gu Fei wanted to know what kind of existence this Shaoqing snake would become after refining numerous beast crystals. Gu Fei knew that beasts that could devour and refine beast crystals definitely had endless potential. Zhongli Ming led Gu Fei and the others into a palace. After that, they sat down respectively. A group of maids immediately served all kinds of desserts and placed them on the table in front of each of them. "Brother Gu, I have a person who has been thinking about you day and night." After sitting down, Zhongli Ming covered his face with his sleeve and said with a sweet smile, "Oh." Gu Fei became stunned. "It seems that I didn't have any romantic affairs in the secular world. I want to see who that person is." "Sister Ling, come out." Zhongli Ming shouted towards the back of the palace. Then, a person walked out from the back of the palace. When Gu Fei saw that person, he couldn't help but frown. Not only did he know this person, he was also very familiar with him. "Gu Fei, it's really you." The person who walked out from the back hall was a handsome young master who was waving a folding fan in his hand. However, this young master's voice was very delicate. When that person saw Gu Fei, she was immediately overjoyed. She wanted to pounce on Gu Fei and throw herself into his wide and sturdy embrace. However, her feet seemed to have taken root on the ground and she did not move at all. "It's you?" The person who came out from the back hall had a special relationship with him. This was because the person who walked out was Ling Luoyan, who was disguised as a man. Although the beautiful Ling Luoyan was dressed as a man, her peerless beauty was hard to conceal, and she wasn't inferior to Zhongli Ming in the slightest. Her skin was like white jade, and her eyes were like autumn waters. Her slender body and graceful figure were like the morning air that was filled with freshness. She was truly graceful and elegant. Ling Luoyan, who was dressed as a man, had a different kind of beauty to her. Seeing how cold Gu Fei was towards her, as if they were strangers, Ling Luoyan's eyes couldn't help but turn red. Tears welled up in her eyes as she stood there in a daze, as if she had lost a moment. The exceptionally intelligent Zhong Li Ming immediately noticed something from their expressions. The relationship between the two of them didn't seem to be ordinary. Gu Fei didn't expect to see Ling Luoyan here. A trace of astonishment appeared on his face, but he quickly returned to normal. "Little sister Ling, Little sister Ling. Zhong Li Ming called out a few times before Ling Luoyan's soul returned to her senses. Seeing Ling Luoyan like this, she couldn't help but shake her head. At this time, even Li Lingfeng could tell that this woman who came out of the rear hall dressed as a man treated Gu Fei a little differently. When did junior brother Gu get to know this woman? Li Lingfeng was a little puzzled. Gu Fei had always been cultivating in Taishin Mountain, and he had never left the mountain. Even if Li Lingfeng scratched her head, she would never have imagined that Gu Fei had met Ling Luoyan during the period when he went missing in Yiming Mountain, and that there had been some misunderstanding between the two of them. Little sister Ling, come and sit here. Zhong Li Ming patted the seat beside him and said to Ling Luoyan. Ling Luoyan walked to Zhong Li Ming's side absent-mindedly and sat down. Her eyes were filled with tenderness and sorrow as she looked at Gu Fei. Anyone would be moved by such emotions. Gu Fei was a normal man. How could he not see Ling Luoyan's intentions when such a beautiful woman was interested in him? However, the world of cultivation was filled with dangers, and Gu Fei wasn't strong enough. If his state of mind was disturbed by worldly love, it would be difficult for him to reach the pinnacle of cultivation. Brother Gu, my little sister Ling seems to be deeply in love with you. Do you want to express something? Zhong Li Ming winked at Gu Fei and said slyly, Express what? Gu Fei said expressionlessly, What an unromantic rock. Zhong Li Ming couldn't help but say. As he looked around, it was as if 100 flowers were blooming, causing everyone's eyes to light up. When Ling Luoyan heard Gu Fei's reply, she couldn't help but reveal a trace of sadness in her eyes. Zhong Li Ming wanted to say more, but at that moment, a blazing wave of heat suddenly came from outside the hall. It was a wave of fire-like energy. Zhong Li Ming, I'm here. Then, a gentle voice with a hint of firmness could be heard from outside the hall. From the voice, it could be seen that it was a woman. Oh no, why is she here? When she heard that voice, Zhong Li Ming's expression changed and a trace of panic flashed in her eyes. She seemed to be a little worried about the woman who had suddenly appeared outside the hall. While the voice was still echoing in the hall, Gu Fei and the others saw a figure in a fiery red robe striding in from outside the door. It was a woman, a young woman in her early 20s. She wore a fiery red, tight-fitting robe, and her hair was tied into a ponytail. She had a beautiful face, a slender figure, and a valiant and heroic bearing. This woman looked like a valiant general charging through enemy lines, and she carried a fiery red spear on her back. The tip of the spear was also fiery red, as if it was burning with a divine flame. What a strong woman! Gu Fei and the others felt a strong sense of oppression from this woman. The blazing wave of heat came from this woman's body. As soon as she stepped into the hall, the temperature in the hall immediately shot up. Gu Fei, Li Lingfeng, and Zhong Li Ming didn't feel any discomfort, but Ling Luoyan, who didn't have a high cultivation base, felt unbearably hot, as if she was sitting next to a bonfire. The red-clothed woman's gaze swept across the hall and finally landed on Gu Fei. The woman looked at Gu Fei and suddenly revealed a bright smile. Why is she smiling at me? Gu Fei's heart skipped a beat. At the same time, a bad premonition surged in his heart, causing him to be wary of this woman. At this moment, a swoosh. The red-clothed woman disappeared on the spot and turned into a ray of fiery light. She used her palm like a blade, and the fiery light burst forth as she slashed at Gu Fei 3 times. The red-clothed woman wasn't completely fearless. She had restrained the vast fire elemental energy to an extremely small area in her palm, evidently not wanting to cause any damage to the things in the hall. The heat wave was oppressive. Under the envelopment of the 3 fiery blade auras, Gu Fei felt as if he was in a sea of fire. He sat still and directly threw out 3 punches. His punches were colorless, but they miraculously blocked the 3 fiery blade auras. Crack! The floor beneath the red-clothed woman's feet instantly cracked from her stomp, and she was forced to take a step back from the recoil. In an instant, it seemed as if the winner had been decided. Seeing this scene, Li Lingfeng couldn't help but feel uneasy. He definitely didn't want anything to happen in these 2 or 3 days. However, it was obvious that the young experts of the southern wilderness weren't convinced and had begun to look for trouble. As the saying goes, the tree wants peace, but the wind won't stop. He didn't want to look for trouble, but trouble came knocking on his door. Good. As expected of the Taoism expert who defeated Hu Zhan, the red-clothed woman looked at Gu Fei, and a terrifying power surged from her body. She didn't even bother to conceal her battle intent. Everyone's expression changed. The southern wilderness was a land of great heroes and geniuses. It really couldn't be underestimated. The woman in front of them was definitely a leading figure of the young generation in the southern wilderness. The phoenix perches on the parasol tree, and the fire shines on the south. Princess Feng of the Vermilion Bird tribe has graced my humble abode with your presence. It's truly an honor. At this moment, Zhong Liming had already stood up and welcomed her with a smile. The Vermilion Bird tribe? Gu Fei stood up as well. A pulse of energy as tremendous as the ocean and as heavy as a mountain radiated from Gu Fei. His eyes flickered with a gaze as sharp as a blade as he stared at the princess before him. His battle intent surged, as if he wanted to fight her. The Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, and Black Tortoise were the outstanding successors of the 4 sacred clans of the southern wilderness. Gu Fei had already met all of them. Every single one of them was an impressive young expert, possessing strength that allowed them to look down on their peers. Feng Shiwu of the Vermilion Bird clan. The princess did not waste any time, directly stating her name. Afterwards, she extended her hand and drew the spear on her back. With a shake of the spear, it was like a venomous dragon had emerged from the sea. The tip of the spear was directly pointed at Gu Fei. The spear in her hand was engraved with simple, fiery patterns. It seemed to be forged from divine metal that still gave off flames, and it seemed to be enveloped in a layer of fire. This was definitely a rare god armament. The presence of the god armament merged with Feng Shiwu's presence, giving off a feeling like she had become one with the spear. Chapter 151. Boom. A great rumble rang out in the battlefield. It was like a clap of thunder. The surging ripples of energy alarmed the Zhongli family of Dragon Emperor City. The descendants of the Zhongli family were extremely surprised. They all rushed out of their places of cultivation and made their way to the clan's battlefield. End of story. 2 silhouettes that were as fast as the wind and as fast as lightning moved on the huge white jade fighting field. They repeatedly blasted out terrifying killing moves that could topple mountains and overturn the seas. The intense energy collided, causing the open-air white jade fighting field of the Zhong family to tremble unceasingly. The Zhongli family truly was extravagant. The colossal battlefield was actually completely constructed out of premium white jade. They had even set up a formation in the battlefield, sealing up and nullifying the terrifying power that the experts in the battlefield had erupted with. By now, the formation of the battlefield had already been activated. At this moment, every piece of white jade that made up the arena emitted a misty brilliance. An unfathomable power sealed the entire arena, completely dispelling the residual power that leaked out, preventing it from being destroyed. Clearly, the Zhongli clan's battle arena was extraordinary. It was specially constructed for battles between experts. The vast and terrifying power of the 2 experts in the battle arena was completely sealed within the battle arena. Only a very small amount of power was able to break through the seal and leak out. Outside the battlefield, Li Lingfeng, Zhong Liming, and Ling Luoyan all watched the battle nervously. It had to be mentioned that the strength of the 2 people in the battlefield was enough for them to look down on their peers. As it turned out, the battle between Feng Shiwu of the Vermilion Bird clan and Gu Fei was already unavoidable. Both of them were eager for battle, so they had already drawn their swords in the hall. They had almost attacked each other. Fortunately, Zhong Liming had arrived in time and brought the 2 of them to the white jade battlefield of the clan, allowing them to fight to their heart's content without any worries. The clothes on Gu Fei's upper body were already in tatters. His upper body, which seemed to be forged from refined iron, contained an extremely tyrannical strength. With just a single step, Gu Fei vanished from where he was. Only an extremely faint blur remained in the air. He was just too fast, so fast that he was basically unrecognizable to the naked eye. A punch, a very ordinary punch, directly landed on the tip of Feng Shiwu's spear. The tremendous power shook the ground. Bang! With a bang, the fist and the spearhead, which was wreathed in raging flames, instantly collided. It was like two pieces of godly metal colliding, and a glaring light burst out, causing people to close their eyes subconsciously. A powerful energy fluctuation that could topple the mountains and overturn the seas exploded in an instant. The shaft of the raging flame's divine spear was bent by Gu Fei's powerful punch. Feng Shiwu's hands had almost lost their grip on the spear. Her palms and even her arms had all suffered from the violent impact from the spear. She could not help but be surprised by Gu Fei's strength. Using one's own body to fight against the divine spear in one's hand, even in the southern wasteland, none of the young experts from the other forces would dare to be so crazy. Even the number one person of the Azure Dragon clan's younger generation, Azure Dragon, did not dare to do so. Gu Fei seemed like a colossal mountain, radiating with unfathomable power. He knocked Feng Shiwu back with a punch, and the ground of the battlefield leapt up with his seemingly ordinary punch. As if it were not for the unfathomable power that blocked Gu Fei's punch, the jade tiles of the battlefield had leapt up a long time ago before shattering to dust. Vermilion Bird Divine Skill, Spear Strikes at the Nine Heavens. Feng Shiwu bellowed out and raised the raging flame's divine spear in her hand. The spear that had been bent by Gu Fei's punch immediately straightened. Afterwards, the tip of the spear erupted with light that resembled the scorching sun, stabbing towards Gu Fei's chest like a star. Roaring flames swept out from Feng Shiwu's body, swallowing her along with the spear that she had sent towards Gu Fei in a single moment. A colossal figure of a vermilion bird and a fire phoenix appeared. The cry of a phoenix rang through the nine heavens. The vermilion bird and fire phoenix, condensed from endless flames, flapped its wings and raised its head, pecking towards Gu Fei. The spectators outside the battlefield were extremely shocked. The phoenix, formed from flames, shook up an entire region. The people of the Zhongli family knew that an expert of the Vermilion Bird clan was fighting in the battlefield. The terrifyingly high temperature was enough to melt metal, but Gu Fei, who was facing this high temperature, treated it as a gentle breeze. His bright eyes were fixed on the huge phoenix that was anxiously pecking at him. In the eyes of others, it was a phoenix condensed from the flames of the Vermilion Bird. However, his gaze pierced through the layer of flames outside, seeing a ball of light as resplendent as a star hidden within the phoenix. The ball of light was condensed from the tip of Feng Shiwu's spear. Under the thrust, the space shook up, and transparent ripples expanded from the phoenix. Feng Shiwu's spear was unstoppable. Although it was not as terrifying as stirring up the nine heavens, it truly shook up an entire region of the world. His body brimming with power left behind a blur. Gu Fei advanced instead of retreating, directly throwing a punch at the incoming phoenix without the slightest hesitation. Boom! It was as if a thunderbolt had descended from the ninth heaven, and a deafening sound pierced through the sky. In that instant, the battle arena emitted a bright light, and mysterious runes appeared on the white jade bricks of the battle arena, blocking the energy storm that had erupted. Even with that being the case, the entire battlefield shook. Over a dozen figures rushed over, but with a wave of Zhongli Ming's hand, they immediately backed off silently. Clearly, the experts of the Zhongli family stationed in Dragon Emperor City had been alarmed. A startling sight unfolded in the battlefield. A wild figure threw a punch at the Vermilion Bird and Fire Phoenix the size of a hill, wreathed in flames. Before the Vermilion Bird and Fire Phoenix condensed from endless flames, the figure was so insignificant. However, it was this insignificant figure that had shaken up the colossal Vermilion Bird and Fire Phoenix. The Vermilion Bird and Fire Phoenix collapsed. Afterwards, as if there was a chain reaction, the mountain-sized Vermilion Bird and Fire Phoenix collapsed from the head to the neck, then to the body. It completely collapsed, dispersing into nothingness. Clang! A fiery red figure flew out from the dispersing flames. Thump! 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 After landing on the ground, the fiery red figure staggered over a dozen steps back. Clang! He stabbed the spear into the ground behind him, and only then did he stop his retreat. Gu Feiquang was like a ferocious beast, emitting a boundless ferocious aura as he took large strides forward. With every step he took, the ground trembled, and the power of the earth rushed out from the ground. Fist of Earth. Endless power of the earth gathered towards Gu Fei's right fist from all directions. Afterwards, he directly threw a punch at Feng Shiwu. Gray light surged forward, as terrifying as the waves. Feng Shiwu's expression immediately changed. Having fought until now, he could not help but admit that he was not Gu Fei's opponent. Tiger's defeat was not undeserved. This Gu Fei's strength had indeed surpassed the boundary of the self-awakening realm. Seeing how the gray power of the Fist of Earth had already completely sealed off the path ahead, Feng Shiwu pushed off the ground without even thinking, turning into a phoenix and rushing into the air, avoiding the power of the fist. At the same time, the spear in his hand erupted with resplendent light, piercing through space and stabbing towards Gu Fei. The light from the spear was like a rainbow, ripping through the surroundings. It was as resplendent as lightning, radiating with a chilling aura of destruction. Oomph! Gu Fei snorted coldly. He took a step and rose into the air. Boom! The unparalleled light from the spear immediately struck where Gu Fei stood before. The ground did not explode. An unfathomable power nullified all of the terrifying power in the light. Streaks of light slithered about on the ground like silver snakes. Feng Shiwu's full-powered strike failed to shake up the battlefield, nor did it destroy it. Gu Fei rushed into the air with a single step before striding through the air. With a single step, terrifying power immediately surged beneath his feet, which he then rushed towards Feng Shiwu. Just admit defeat. You're not my opponent. Gu Fei gazed at Feng Shiwu below and said proudly. His voice echoed through the battlefield. Desolate steps, 8 kills. A single step was as heavy as a mountain, suddenly appearing above Feng Shiwu's head. It made Feng Shiwu feel like Mount Tai was pressing down on him. When the desolate steps was fast, it could reach the extremities of 8 steps. When it faced an enemy, it could also reach the extremities of 8 steps. A single step was enough to unleash the might of collapsing mountains. Oomph! There's no such thing as admitting defeat in my dictionary. Fire Phoenix dances through the 9 heavens. Feng Shiwu bellowed out. Afterwards, a tremendous pulse of energy erupted from her body. Roaring flames surged from her body, and she seemed to turn into a fire phoenix that soared above the 9 heavens. In a split second, she charged out from under Gu Fei's desolate steps. Gu Fei followed up with a second step. Like he had teleported, he appeared above Feng Shiwu in the blink of an eye. Terrifying power surged beneath his feet, and transparent ripples expanded into the surroundings. Even the space around him had twisted. Although he was 20 to 30 meters away from the ground of white jade still trembled constantly despite being protected by power. However, it was not destroyed. What a terrifying ability! Outside the battlefield, Zhong Liming exclaimed. She was extremely surprised that Gu Fei's power could actually shake up the battlefield. That's not an ability. Li Lingfeng stared at the figure in the sky that resembled both a god and a demon. Her eyes shone brilliantly. Not an ability? Could it be a Dao technique? Zhong Liming exclaimed. She did not sense any Dao technique fluctuations from Gu Fei's body. It's not a mystique or a Taoist technique, but it's better than a mystique or a Taoist technique. What he cultivates is martial, Li Lingfeng murmured with a calm expression. Wu? The martial Dao actually has such a great power that it can rival divine abilities and Dao techniques? Not only was Zhong Liming shocked, even Ling Luoyan was shocked. The inheritance of the ancient martial way had long been severed. The so-called martial skills in the world, however, did not have martial-only skills. Martial techniques without martial couldn't be compared to divine abilities and Dao arts at all. The people of the younger generation had long since forgotten what martial arts was. When Li Lingfeng said that what Gu Fei practiced was actually martial arts, Zhong Liming and the rest were shocked. Martial techniques were mediocre and could not be considered elegant. This was already a common understanding among the current generation of cultivators. However, what they did not know was that in ancient times, cultivators who had achieved success in cultivation were enough to slaughter immortals, gods, and demons. They were terrifying existences that were almost undefeatable. With Gu Fei's second step, Feng Shiwu was in danger. Wind and lightning seemed to surge beneath Gu Fei's feet, whistling wildly.